Good evening, everyone.
Everybody, this is a special edition, Ukrainian edition. What is happening in the Ukraine? What do we think about it? Is Russia based and red pilled? Or did they overplay their hand? Who are we supposed to support in the sense of supporting? Again, I don't have a dog in this fight. It's not really my thing. Um, this is a very complicated situation. RGR says no more brother wars. Wanako says Russia deserves to be buck broken. We're gonna get into all of that real soon. Hopefully, we're gonna be able to have both perspectives on it, because there are two perspectives on this. Let's not be foolish and just say that, based Russia, they're so based, or oh yeah, Ukraine is great. They're sticking it to the Russians. There are two perspectives on this thing, and I just want you guys to know that. I'm not sure if we'll be able to have different people on the panel tonight. I am trying to get people on here, and I just wanted to start it early because I didn't want to keep you guys waiting. But I'm not really sure if someone's going to come in. I would really like for there to be someone in the pro-Ukraine camp, since there aren't that many. I know there's a homie on Twitter that I follow. He's pro-Ukraine, which is not the trend that I've been seeing on my Twitter. I've been mostly seeing pro-Russian support from Hispano Twitter, as an English-speaking Hispanic Twitter, and I've seen more or less condemnation of Russia and sometimes explicit Ukrainian support on Colombian Twitter. And there's a couple of reasons as to why that is, and we have to get into those reasons to understand this issue at a partisan level. So the Colombian Twitter narrative, which is more or less a Western liberal democratic narrative, is that Russia is this imperialist faction that is expanding its borders. It's undermining the democracy of Ukraine. This was a clear red line. Crimea was already a bit of a sus thing for the Western democracies. They very much condemn that. I think up until this day, if I'm not mistaken, you can't use Western credit cards in Crimea. I think apparently the region locks on there. There's a couple of services that you can't use that are from the Western Crimea. But the situation in Crimea was more forgivable since Crimea is very Russian in its ethnic makeup. As you guys know, there's such a thing as an ethnic Ukrainian, and there is such a thing as an ethnic Russian. There's a lot of ethnic Russians in Ukraine because, obviously, due to the history of the Soviet Union, Moscow sent a lot of Russians into all these places in the Soviet Union that were not natively ethnic Russian lands. And that's why you see places like Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and now obviously Ukraine have a significant Russian minority. That was because the Soviet Union put them in there. So as you can tell, these Russian minorities, even after the Soviet Union collapsed, they were always going to be a bit of a troublemaking bunch because they never really integrated into the local culture, not fully at least. And so this kind of caused Russian separatist sentiments in some parts of these regions, and what we can now call the Commonwealth, the Russian Commonwealth, or the Russian sphere of influence. And in the case of the Ukraine, these Russian separatists were based around Crimea and the Donbass. So let me look at a map of Ukraine to show you guys kind of what I'm talking about, to see what's kind of been going on so you guys can understand the bigger picture here. There we go. That's the perfect map. Okay. Let me see. So as you guys can see here, two areas that are legally part of Ukraine, but have been taken over by Russia. As you can see here, Crimea was annexed by Russia in 2014, and there's just a lot of interesting stuff going on in that part of the world. In 2014, there were Russians who had no military identification. They were known as the Little Green Men that were taking over that part of Ukraine. Russia made a very heavy move trying to annex Crimea, so much so that that the main city of Crimea, which is called Sevastopol, was made a federal city in Russia, and that's kind of like a big deal. I think there's, other than Sevastopol, there's only two federal cities in Russia. The other two being Moscow, of course, and St. Petersburg. Let me verify with you guys that information. But as you can see here, this other region on the right, which is called the separatist controlled area, that's east. As you can see, that's eastern Ukraine. That's already getting to Western Russia territory, and that area of Ukraine has a lot of Russians in there. And the two people's republics that Putin just acknowledged, if you guys looked at the news last week, was the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic. And these two were forming this sort of pseudo-federal union called New Russia, or Novorossiya in Russian, and then they were trying to join Russia, but it wasn't it was practically Russian, but not legally. But Ukraine could still like take it back if they wanted to, but then that could trigger a war with Russia, and so there was just this very, very, very heavy sort of tension between these two countries. And I guess for whatever reason, 2022 was the year that Russia decided to finally take over the Donbass, which is, again, this is called the Donbass, and it's split into two people's republics, Donetsk and Luhansk. Oh yeah, guys, so yeah, as I was saying, let me show you guys the map of the federal cities of Russia. As you can see here, Moscow is one of them, of course. St. Petersburg, obviously one as well. And then Sevastopol is the third one. And again, Sevastopol, it says, Sevastopol is the newest federal city located in the disputed region of Crimea, which was annexed by the Russian Federation in 2014, but is recognized as Ukrainian territory by most of the international community. Now, Putin was kind of able to take over Crimea because, I mean, there's a lot of Russians in Crimea, and so Putin could make the case that Crimeans were better off under Russian authority than Ukrainian authority, and, you know, the Western powers, I guess they kind of didn't want to rock the boat, or they kind of agree with it, so in terms of that, they were fine with that. With the issue of the Donbass, I think Putin could have gotten away with it. He couldn't have gotten away with it a second time because, again, these places are indeed very Russian. So Putin could have made the case again that since this is ethnic Russian territory, it belongs better in Russia, and they could make some legal case like, you know, 100 years ago, this was part of Russia anyways. So wait, guys, give me a minute. All right, I'm back. So Putin could make the case that, yeah, you know, this is Russian territory anyways, and the Soviet Union's breakup was very messy, and we understand that. I mean, there's so many breakaway republics and, independent states from the former Soviet era. I mean, almost all, like a lot of the unrecognized states around the world are in the former Soviet Union. You have Nagorno-Karabakh, you have South Ossetia, you have Transnistria. I could pull it up a little bit later on Wikipedia. You know, I'll be on this Wikipedia stuff nerding out. And so I knew about these conflicts more or less, you know, back in 2013, back in 2014, but I just kind of knew them in the Wikipedia sense. Like, you just read it and it's just like, okay, like this is a lot of former Soviet nonsense. Like, But Putin couldn't make the case like, yo, this is Russian, so we're gonna take it. But the thing is, Putin overstepped his boundaries. He didn't just take over the Donbass. He wanted to go further than that and actually just straight up go for Ukraine. I don't know if he wanted to take over Ukraine. I don't know if he just wanted to buck break them and to just leave them completely incapable of doing anything to Russia. As a warning sign to the West, it's like, hey, do not put nukes or any military installation near my shit, or I will destroy you guys. Or maybe he wanted to take over. We'll see. Let me just check out the comments though. So Chaco Lopez says it's weird how anti-Americans decry American imperialism, but when Russia or other powers do it, it's fine. Most citizens of the EU and the United States and Canada are pro-Ukraine. Mestizo Menace says Putin shills for BLM. Strangelove says I really couldn't care less about this conflict. I live an ocean away. Puerto Rican rum with a salute. Hey, what's up, Puerto Rican rum? RJR says Putin is a huge crypto Jew. Intrepido Jaguar says yo que onda parcero. Guanaco says I support the West. Felix Matamoros says Hitler used the German minorities argument prior to World War II. He did, which is a very funny argument, and we're gonna get to that because this conflict is so messy. You guys don't even know the beginning of it, but we are gonna get to it. Intrepido says I support Russia. Corky, what's up? Felix says Russia just wants more imperial power. They're using the Russian minorities as a pretext. Mestizo Menace says Putin recruits Antifa goons to create chaos in Donbass and Crimea. Intrepido says Putin wants to bring back the USSR. And Guanaco says, I don't understand this anti-American sentiment from retards to live in places like Florida and Califas. Shaking my head. What's up, RJR? and then Moinox80 says, why the fuck would someone support Russia? There are reasons why people would support Russia. And, okay. Oh, never mind. There we go. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Noka, what's up, man?
What's up?
Man, long time no see. I haven't been here in a while. But nice to see you, man. Nice to see you. What's up?
Nah, not much. Just been keeping up with this whole situation in Europe.
Yeah, it's gotten crazy, I tell you. And I really appreciate you coming here because my Twitter has been mostly pro-Russian. And I wanted to get a pro-Ukrainian perspective because, I really do believe there has to be at least two sides to every story. And you can't just foolishly say, oh, yeah, Russia's so based. They're doing this and doing that thing. It seems rather childish to me. Again, I may be able to make some argument for Russia doing this thing or that thing, but just blanket stating that Russia is a good the moral entity for doing this or because of doing this, I think there's a lot of holes in that argument there. So I really appreciate you coming here and giving us kind of like the lowdown on the Ukrainian perspective of what's going on.
Yeah, well, I'm American. I'm not from Ukraine or anything, but I happen to believe that if people want to make sense of a situation, any situation that humans are in, you have to take the religious aspect into account. And so that's a lot of my views are based on what I've seen in that respect.
Right, right. Well, because the things I've seen you retweeting a lot of the other side, because on all the other people that I follow, it's the stereotypical anti-American sort of rhetoric. It's like, oh, America's cringe, America's the gay empire, and Russia is based for making moves, and that's going to be the end of America, and that's a good thing, and so therefore it doesn't matter if Ukraine falls. I've also even heard the neo-Nazi argument that because because Ukrainian neo-Nazis are a little bit more involved in the government than most normal people will tolerate, that it's okay for Russia to invade Ukraine because they're denazifying the country. And so there are a lot of arguments that like they don't make a lot of sense, or they're made in bad faith, I would say. Both for and against, and both on two perspectives. So I wanted to get what you've been gathering from the Ukrainian perspective on things.
Well, just from the kind of military aspect, I from what I gather, the Ukrainians had a successful first day. They expected things to be much worse than they currently are. So they're hopeful, but for all for all we know, that Putin saved his stronger troops for day two and day three. What I have been telling people is in this fight between Ukraine and Russia, it's in Russia's best interest to finish it quickly because the longer it drags on, the more costly it's going to be. And costly comes in many different ways: economic, political. If you're Putin. Um, there's so many kind of aspects to cost. It's not just numbers, lives, equipment, um, public support on the among other countries, like in the United Nations and stuff. So, but to comment on what you said, um, the word that I use to describe what you just laid out is reactionary. So a lot of what you see online is a reaction to what's going on, but that's where social media thrives because social media is really about the surface level. It, so you can tweet out something that seems like it seems logical on the surface, and most people are okay with that, especially if it is something they agree with on the surface. So they'll like and they'll retweet it and they'll engage with it and then they'll move on.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not gonna lie. I sometimes do be like that, so I have to check
Hmm.
myself on that. And but that's why I thought your perspective was so interesting because again, I've only been hearing the Russian side of the story, and as far as I know, the part of eastern Ukraine that is known as the Donbass is very Russian. It's very ethnically Russian. They could be the majority or a very significant minority. And so, oh, and well, as far as I know, the reason why it's like that, it's because of the Soviet Union and how they used to forcefully Russify or Russify, however you want to say it, certain
Hmm.
regions of the Soviet Union. So that's why you have Russians in Kazakhstan because they took out some Kazakhs and they put some Russians in there.
Yeah.
And when the Soviet Union collapsed, well, now you have all these ethnic Russians, and now they're a minority in these regions, and they may have some separatist sentiments. And so, to be honest, that's why I wasn't too bothered with the whole Crimea thing or with the whole Donbass thing because I understood that okay, this is ultimately Russia's fault,
Hmm.
but this is something that's been very like decades in the making. Maybe not intentionally so, but like that's what Soviet Union's gonna Soviet Union. That's what they did. They put Russians in certain places, and now since the Soviet Union's collapsed, now they're gonna be pro Russian Federation because I don't know, maybe they want the old Soviet Union back or they want Greater Russia, whatever have you. And so I took these two regions as okay, that whatever Russia's gonna take them. I understand that, and there's not much you can do about it. But when Russia went further than that and actually started trying to make a run for Kiev, that's when I got really confused because, okay, Western Ukraine is not friends with Russia, like, at all. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like
Well,
as
you
far as,
you 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 point out a kind of divide in Ukraine, and I would point to, for instance, the Holodomor. The Holodomor
yes.
was a genocide of a lot of ethnic Ukrainians in the kind of east of Ukraine. And so naturally, when you wipe out a people and you move in, well, now you've gone from ethnic Ukrainians to ethnic Russians.
Absolutely, and this whole thing of Russia trying to complain about Ukrainians not liking them, well,
Hmm.
it's like you've been messing with Ukrainians for so long.
Yeah.
How can you expect Western Ukraine to just fall like that and crumble and just be like, oh yeah, no, we support Russia? And I actually tweeted about, yeah, let me just put, hey, yo, Henry, what's up, man? Um, so I think you retweeted this about some
Yo,
Ukrainian
yo, what's up?
forces. Hey, what's up, man? So I think you retweeted this about the Ukrainian forces who like managed to stand
Yeah.
force the Russians back. And what I said
Hmm.
was, this might just turn into a reverse Afghanistan. The ones with the high morale are the Ukrainians, since they're ultra nationalists and are fighting for their lives, and Russia has no business beyond the Donbass. We'll have to see how this goes. Because I've seen a lot of hot takes about, and actually, I think I might have actually done one myself, about how the fall of Afghanistan might have led Putin to kind of embolden himself and then make a run for Kiev. Whether that influenced him or not, I'm not exactly sure. But now I'm starting to realize, thanks to you actually, that no, the situation is actually very different from Afghanistan, because in the case of Afghanistan, there was a portion of the Afghanis that actually kind of supported the Taliban, and
Yeah.
they were like, okay, like if they take over if the Taliban take over, like whatever, we'll just let it be. But in Ukraine, especially in Western Ukraine, they are very ultra nationalists. They see themselves as a fundamentally different peoples from Russia, and they do not like Russians at all, pretty much for
And
historical
by ultra
reasons.
nationalists, do you mean like libs or State Department types, or are these aren't they like German or something? The ones
No,
that
no,
like
no,
German, something like that.
no, no.
There's like
So
this big confusion after World War II, with Ukraine and its borders and Germany and the Soviet Union, and it's like founder of a like nationalist party, the Ukraine.
no, no. So Russian ultranationalism, from the little I've read, actually dates back quite a bit, especially to this guy, Stepan Bandera, and he's kind of like one of the ultranationalist fathers of modern Ukraine. He's very controversial. He's not universally
I
liked.
mean, I mean, he was anti-Semitic like every other Slavic person that
Well,
so it's like, I mean, what gives?
well, that's kind of the weird thing. It's like, and Noko, you can correct me on this, but like Russian ultranationalism, there is a weird neo-Nazi thing going on, but they're also like not actually anti-Semitic. There's a lot of Jews in Ukraine, and they seem to be fine with that.
Well, I would like to just kind of take a step back because this conflict between the Ukrainians and the Russians has been ongoing for off and on for 1,000 years. And so that naturally has existed way before a lot of what we are used to. So, like, way before there was ever a Nazi, there were Ukrainians and Russians, you know? And so, when I looked at the situation, the one thing I found, I think you can take this to the bank. Most cases, a lot of people online, they give their kind of analysis of a situation, but most, almost fully, if not mostly, ignore the religious aspect. And that's what I started my comments with. And it matters because there happens to be a kind of shared history when it comes to not only Ukraine and Russia, but also Belarus. And it comes to that, that short term, or that word, in two of the three nations I just laid out, and that's Rus. The Rus were a people, and they were led by Vladimir. And this particular leader, you could think of as a kind of Charlemagne almost. He went around, he conquered a bunch of lands, and he had this, quite big empire that encompassed modern day Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. And so the three different nations tie their origin to this particular guy who was the leader of the Rus people. But the historical fact is that this leader was baptized, which is a huge event in all three nations. Um, he was baptized in modern day Kiev. And what's interesting is when you look at the kind of depictions of the baptism, there's been art that has been created in churches and stuff like that. If you look at the Ukrainian art, he looks like an ethnic Ukrainian. He has a kind of long mustache. It looks kind of like a upside down U. But if you go to the Russian depictions, he has this long beard. So he's supposed to look ethnically Russian. And so all these nations kind of tie their origin, their heritage to the Rus people. And so you see how they kind of have this, common uh, origin that they are claiming to. But the historical fact, if you look, is that the baptism occurred in modern day Ukraine. But the problem is, if you're a Russian, if you're Russian, and you're tying your kind of lineage back to this event, that didn't occur in Moscow. That baptism didn't occur in Moscow.
Hmm. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and another fascinating to kind of more modern situation is you had the Roman Empire, and that kind of split up in two, where we're going back 2,000 years. And so you had the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. And when the Roman Empire converted to Christianity, the Roman Empire was kept intact through the church. The thing is that there's naturally a Western and an Eastern church. The Western church is centered in Rome, and the Eastern church was centered in Constantinople. It's called the Orthodox Church, in contrast to the Catholic Church on the other side. So, in that, you had the patriarch, who was the kind of father, the Holy Father of Constantinople for many centuries, as a kind of the de facto pope on the east side. He's not the pope, but he's kind of like it. He's like the head guy. But then, centuries later, Moscow began to grow in influence in the region. And what you've seen lately is the Patriarch of Moscow seeking to kind of overtake the Patriarch of Constantinople, who is located in Istanbul, Turkey today.
Right, right. That's kind of, as you said, he's not the pope, but the Orthodox, they kind of work on a first among equals
Yep,
system. So it's
yep.
like, yeah.
And it matters because, for instance, when the Patriarch of Moscow meets with the Pope, that's presented uh, as the leaders of the East and the West. And so you see a kind of power play to overtake the guy in Constantinople. And this matters because Ukraine in 1991 it voted its way out of the Soviet Union, and became sovereign. And ever since then, we're talking 1991, Ukraine has developed. Yes, it's not perfect, no country is, but it's been making an effort to be sovereign and democratic, and in this respect, Western. Um, and an aspect of that is the religious aspect. So there are churches in Ukraine. There's no one church, there are many. And these churches appealed to the guy in Constantinople because he had a excommunication on them. And so they asked him, can you lift it so that we can possibly unify and have one Ukrainian church? And naturally, the patriarch in Moscow didn't like this. So the patriarch of Constantinople, another power move, he went ahead and granted the Ukrainians their request. And this caused a kind of splitting between Constantinople and Moscow. And in the middle of all this is Ukraine.
Now I'm starting to see what you mean by the religious aspect of it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Kind of
and
makes sense to me
the on the political front, it's actually a kind of Putin talking point is the role of NATO. The basic logic is that NATO has gone too close for comfort. Russia wants to have some kind of buffer between herself and NATO, and that's why she seeks to kind of take over Ukraine and whatnot, or so the story goes. But what I described is 1,000-year conflict that has little, if anything, to do with NATO.
here. I don't know about that because
I mean, wasn't it always predicted that NATO would be the primary reason why Ukraine why the Ukraine is in the situation it finds itself in today?
Well, I mean, it's interesting
As in, like
you asked.
NATO aggression, expansion out east. This is the other way around.
Well, it's interesting you put it in those terms, because I think that's a popular kind of understanding that people have, but this is approaching the situation from the political, you know, and that's what most people tend to look at. I'm more interested in the religious because, for instance, in the case of Russia, you have the Russian Orthodox Church, but that historically, at least since the fall of the Soviet Union in the 90s, it's really been an arm or a kind of tool for the Russian state. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the Russian Orthodox Church was one of the most trusted institutions in Russia. And so naturally, when the politicians made the transition, they made use of that trust. And you see it in this kind of case where, for instance, Putin declares that he's going to go into Syria to help Assad. And then the head of the Russian Orthodox Church declares that as a holy war against terrorism. And so you have the theological or religious cover for the political actions.
Hmm. Okay.
Fair enough.
Um,
I mean, I'm really unfamiliar with the religious component to it. Besides, both sharing Russian Orthodox tradition, I guess. And there are many
No,
Ukrainian Catholics, Roman Catholics, right?
no, it's more. I mean,
Or is it?
so here's a fascinating aspect to all this. So a few years ago in 2014, there were these kind of protests that ended up snowballing and really attracting a bunch of people in Ukraine to come out and protest. This was called by the Ukrainians the Revolution of Dignity. So at these protests, you had most of the religions in Ukraine present. I'm talking Muslims, Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox, Jews, you name it. They were present. And what they agreed upon was the notion of dignity. This idea that humans have a basic worth, and that they have a kind of right to. One of the big themes was religious liberty. And you see it, when you have all these religions and they're getting along and they agree on this one thing, it's really putting what they're saying in practice. Religious liberty, allow people to believe what their hearts choose. And so, shortly after that kind of revolution, which resulted in the kind of overthrow, not overthrow, that's kind of like a violent term, more so the transition of power, right? The leader in Ukraine at the time, he wound up stepping down. He was replaced by somebody else. Soon after that, Putin moved into Ukraine. No, not to Ukraine, into Crimea. Like, following these 2014 protests, he made his move into Crimea. And so when you look at dignity, you're really talking mainly about a Christian notion, popularized in the 20th century, human rights, these kinds of things. And so you have that. And the problem for Putin politically and for the Russian Orthodox Church is it's in this culture of desiring freedom that you have a clash with Putin and the Russian Orthodox Church's style of governance, where they're more heavy-handed and more controlling and that kind of thing.
okay, so I guess the counterpoint here would be why should we support some of these values like religious liberty and freedom of expression and things like that. Now in the case of freedom of expression, or at least freedom of opinion, I definitely, I mean, I have to support that, right? Because if I want to talk freely, I should be able to give others the same right to talk freely. Um, the religious freedom argument here, a lot of people don't seem to like that argument because that's exactly why they're supporting Russia, because they're kind of tired of this
Hmm.
Western democratic
Yep.
system of government,
Exactly. Exactly.
and it's brought these things that more traditionalist minded people don't like LGBTQ rights, minority rights, and that's kind of that's one of the angles that the shit posters on Twitter. I guess I've kind of dabbled in that myself as a joke. I've kind of dabbled in it. It's like, oh, we're gonna beat your gay Ukrainian democracy, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the crux of that, the for that to work, Ukraine would have to be like this totally degenerate place that is just as degenerate as Western Europe, and Ukrainians don't really believe in the Ukrainian nation because it doesn't exist and it's a made up thing and it's always been
Hmm.
Russia or whatever, whatever. But again, in the case of Ukraine, it's very, very different because you do have an ultra nationalist aspect to it. And I've also seen people saying some idiotic things like, "Oh, these Ukrainian fighters for democracy and blah," and I'm like, I don't think Ukrainians are necessarily fighting for democracy as what they're more fighting for is for their nation. Like you can actually make a very strong case that the Ukrainian resistance right now is a national resistance, not so much an ideological resistance. I mean, there's ideology in that as well, but it's mostly like an like an
What a lot of Klaus, what a lot of what I've heard of Ukrainians would say is that the nation like defining moment was 2014 when Crimea was invaded and basically started a war. That's kind of what even added another layer to its nationalism, right?
Yeah,
I
but the
mean,
counter,
regardless if Putin was on the right or wrong to do that back then. I mean, look where we are today. Sound like he successfully annexed the entire
I'll just say that the
country. Then,
counterpoint to even the word nationalism, or at least kind of enlarge it a little bit, is that for many Ukrainians, religion is key to that their nation, right? They are largely a Christian people, and their values reflect that. But even though they are that, they all I think an extension or an aspect of that is religious liberty, right? That is mainly a kind of Christian notion because the basic thinking is that we're made in the image of God, and that as a result we are basically good because God is goodness, and so we have this kind of dignity or value or worth, and this kind of thing like human life is sacred and whatnot, right? Um, but herein you have this kind of already you're talking about something that we're used to in the West. This is a kind of Western reality that, in many ways, is abused. Right? You give people freedom, and they can make the most out of it, or they can squander it, and that's what you see a lot in the West. We don't appreciate what we have, and we squander it. But nonetheless, this is the path that Ukraine has been on, and it clashes with a kind of more medieval, heavy-handed, the church is the state and the state is the church kind of rule. That a lot of people, I think a lot of reactionaries, that's what they desire, but they don't
yes,
have it. And so
yes.
they seek it where they can get it. And that's where they see a guy like Putin as the leader that they would want, the Caesar that is willing to cross the Rubicon, in contrast to Trump, who's too afraid to do so.
Exactly, and I think I saw you tweet once that it is Putin that is using the church rather than the church using Putin.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
right, right. Um, well, here's the thing. Assuming that the Ukrainian resistance fails, and to this point, I genuinely don't know if it will or if it won't. I'm very ignorant to this topic. Um, there would have to be a Western counteroffensive to this. And I think this tweet perfectly sums up why people wouldn't really want that. This was actually a good take from Billy, believe it or not. It says, "No Russian ever call me Latinx," and that kind of embodies this Western fatigue of interventionism. Because we all, at least, if you're in your mid 20s and older, you've kind of gone through the political cycle of, George Bush, Obama, not so much Trump, but you kind of saw in those administrations that there was a lot of interventionism that didn't have these very clearly moral terms, like in the Cold War. I mean, in the Cold War, it was us and the Soviets, right? And the Soviets saw it as, us versus the Americans, and that was kind of the dynamic. And after the Soviet Union fell, and after 9/11 happened, it was like, okay, we have to go to war with this radical Islamic terrorism, and then two big mistakes kind of occurred. Now, we can kind of argue whether Afghanistan was a mistake early on. Um, I really can't see otherwise, but at least from my perspective, Iraq was a complete disaster, and
Yeah.
that's kind of a stain that the U.S. has never been able to wipe off itself, because Iraq is used as kind of like an argument nowadays to no longer intervene in any country ever, because the argument, and even Libya, actually, you look at the case of Libya, and you look at these two countries and say, we don't trust, and they'll say, we don't trust you anymore. We don't believe that you're gonna institute Jeffersonian democracy for goodness sake,
Hmm.
and enlighten these people. Like, no, you have nefarious interests, you have business interests, your political interests, and we don't
But more
believe you when it.
importantly, you have the people's interests, right? You have the ruler, but then you have the ruled. And if Afghanistan is taught any future rulers anything, is that you need to keep the people in mind. And I think it links up to what we're seeing, because Putin's logic is, I'm going to bomb these people and win over their hearts and their minds. And what occurs in reality is that people turn against you, right? It's a very human reality, where it's not so much about respect, but more about fear. And when somebody fears you, they wait until they can strike, rather than if someone respects you, where they're okay with being ruled because you respect them and they respect you. It's mutual in that sense. And just another word on kind of the U.S. involvement, not only in Afghanistan, not only in Iraq and Libya, but also in Vietnam. In contrast to the situation we're seeing with Russia, in those cases, goals wise, it was murky. It's like, what are we in these places to do? What are we here for? Who are we fighting? What are our aims? What are our objectives? In Russia, it's pretty clear. Occupying the nation of Ukraine, installing a ruler, and then moving on to neighboring nations. So that already is a very clear contrast. And the question that I'd ask is, what would America look like if it had such a clear objective, right?
Right, but even then, again, the argument that would still be made in by what you're saying is, well, we don't even want to be part of the U.S. or its sphere of influence. We've kind of seen what the U.S. has done to a lot of supposedly Western allies. They've imported a lot of their socio cultural and political nonsense to our borders, and that's been destabilizing us, and we're tired of it, and we're seeking protection from that in Russia and its kind of new sort of Putinist empire. And they can even
Yeah.
point to, they can point to countries like, say, the UK and France, places that are very Western, very allied with the U.S. There's no argument there, right? But even these countries have suffered from U.S. progressivism, because this whole especially the whole Black Power thing, right? Black American empowerment politics has hit the UK and France and US racial politics in a way that doesn't really make sense in their national context. The UK isn't really known for being racist within its borders. I mean, I guess you can make a case within the empire. I don't know about that. France, I guess you can also make a case, but again, France, wasn't really like the U.S. in terms of its racism. But now, due to American college campuses and their influence, well, now you have, the British Black Lives Matter and the French Black Lives Matter, and none of these really fit in within the dynamics of France and the UK, and they, whether intentionally or not, these do destabilize these countries at both at an individual level, person to person, but also at the national level, because you're now undoing or deconstructing that nation from an American perspective. And
Yeah.
so what I've been seeing is that some of these countries who don't want to partake in that, they're clutching ever closer to China and Russia, particularly
Hmm.
because we're talking about Russia. And so, what would the argument be for standing up? Like, the argument is obviously makeable, whatever you're gonna say, in terms of, hey, we're Ukrainians, we're our own nation, and these Russians want to genocide us or wipe us
Hmm.
out or
Hmm.
absorb us. So that argument is very solid. But what argument could be made as to request support of the U.S., which may not have your best interests at hand, social, culturally, and politically?
Well, the interesting aspect of all of this is that I brought up how in 1991 Ukraine voted her way out of the Soviet Union, and when you look at the joining of NATO by countries such as Poland post the fall of the Soviet Union, you're talking about realities and choices that were made in many respects freely, right? America didn't put a gun to Poland's head. Poland wanted to be a part of NATO. And a big aspect of that is the stability that comes with being protected by America, right? But I think the key word in all of this is liberty and it's freedom. And my counter to the people that are tired of the kind of degeneracy that's become so common in the West is to do something about it, because at least for today, they're free to. And one has to question how much of the critique is really a kind of rationalization for not doing anything, right? So I can't expect to live in the West and to have it be high culture and moral if I'm not playing a part in that. So I have to get out and I have to be involved in the whole process. It's much easier for many people to simply be ruled. Leave it up to whoever's in charge. If it's Putin, he'll take care of it for me. And I think a lot of the critique is a rationalization. It's not so much, yes, there are extremes, but the extremes aren't made overnight. They come about through people getting complacent, people becoming apathetic with respect to the political process, and thinking that their vote doesn't matter, that they don't matter, that no matter what they do, uh, corrupt people are going to be corrupt. And so if I've learned anything from looking at the case of Ukraine, is these are people that have had that are currently fighting for that liberty. They treasure that liberty because they know the other side. They know what it's like to just leave it in the hands of one ruler, and then to experience that ruler uh, making mistakes that they have to pay for. Right.
Right, and that's a very interesting point that you said about Poland joining NATO, because and this is something that I never really quite understood from both the Duganist types and the progressive left. Well, parts of the progressive left who are anti-American intervention or imperialism, whatever have you. It's that argument. It's like, oh, these countries are being forced to join NATO, and in some cases, you could make the case that they're being bribed or forced or whatever. But I would say that in the case of the former Soviet Union and the former Warsaw Pact, I don't think you even have to bribe them. It's like, do you think these people, after 69 years of Soviet rule,
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
gonna be like, oh no, yeah, Russia, we're like homies, bro. Like, we just split because of some whatever, some administrative differences, but like, we're
Hmm.
totally cool with the
Yeah.
Russians. Like, no, they probably did want to join NATO because they really dislike Russia. So they were like, hey, we'll
Yeah.
take help wherever we can get it, and if it's from the Americans, We kind of don't care. We just want Russia off our soil. We know how they're like. Guys, we live with them for so long. You don't know Russia like we do. So we
Uh-huh.
would
Yeah.
like take any chance. So that was super interesting what you said there. But the other part, wait, what was the other part you said? I kind of got lost. The after you said the NATO thing, what was it that
Well,
you
the other
said? Sorry.
part was how if I'm in the West and I
Oh,
critique
right, 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 right.
global homo, in many ways it's a convenient excuse. If I sit around and I do nothing, and I
Right.
allow my society to crumble, and I react to the crumbling, and I don't like the crumbling, I can pin the crumbling on the ruling class, and really, in many ways, free myself of responsibility. It's not
Oh, okay.
my
Yeah, yeah,
fault.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's the regime.
Right, right. And okay. Yeah, because I mean, I would say that after the '60s, there was a lot of degeneracy that started creeping in, and the previous generation either did not do anything against it, as you said, or just actually ended up embracing it. So, and as you said, this is kind of like a very late help me Putin sort of
Hmm.
thing where it's like I couldn't do it myself, so I need you to. But here's the thing, but I'm not sure the argument stands with some of the younger folks because like what were we supposed to do? We were born in this era. I
Yeah.
mean, we would
Yeah,
love to
but
fight
I think
more.
that kind of question gets at this sense of helplessness that that one person feels. What does my vote matter anyway? And I think if democracy has taught people in the West anything, is that it takes, yes, one person can change the world, but a big aspect of that is the people that they inspire. So you think of the charismatic leader in John F. Kennedy, right? The nation looks up to him, but you also have the people of America that are acting. It's not just one person acting; it's an entire community, it's an entire state, it's an entire nation. But when these nations refuse to act, and then things worsen, it's much easier to say it's not my fault. It's that person's fault. And that's why I mentioned like the squandering of liberty. Whereas in contrast, in Ukraine, for instance, they're dying for it. They want it and they're willing to die for it, because they see themselves as humans, with dignity, with worth. There's some about us that means that we can have more than the law of the jungle that Putin provides. In reality, not so much on the surface. On the surface, it looks like this guy's a hero. He's going around and doing what he wants. But the reality is deeper than the surface. And it's a lot of times you don't see it on Twitter because Twitter is mainly about the surface.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of made for that. When you have 280 characters,
Yeah.
there's not many insights you can glean from that. So I'm gonna read the comments. There's quite a lot of comments since we last started ranting. So we'll see. Strange Love says BRICS versus NATO when. Julian de Leon says Slava Rosia. Intrepido says Americans can bomb children in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, but no World War III. Strangelove said, "My argument in favor of Russia is that if America did it, they can do it." Um, Let me see. Intrepido says anything anti-West is viewed positive, so I'm not surprised Hispanic pygmies choose NATO. RJR says both are in bed with Israel. And then Strangelove says Ukraine's president is a Jew. And I'm going to get to something really interesting here after that. Guanaco says Veneco support Putin. Mestizo Menace says Venecos are getting ripped off by the Kremlin. Julian de Leon says Ukraine is Russia. Guanaco says Venecos, Balseros, and Nicaraguans. Julian says Cope and Seed pick the Hispanic cooks. Only the brokers of India support Ukraine. Well, actually, no. As far as I know, Hispanistas are supporting Russia. So I have no idea where you're getting this concept that pro Hispanidad people are supporting Russia. Guanaco says Russia's gonna make gas prices spike, and commies be like, I'm fine with that. Clown world. Lucas says Ukraine and Belarus used to be split between Russia, Prussia, and Poland, Lithuania.
Yeah.
Stand Up says, I think resources will slowly get more scarce, along with power and internet outage. Um, Moynock says, scarcity of resources leads to higher prices and entrepreneurs finding solutions or companies searching more of those resources.
Yeah,
Let's
normally.
see.
Not in this case.
And Strangelo makes a very interesting case, and I just learned about this. He says, let's not forget that Ukraine wouldn't be in the situation if it hadn't given its nuclear weapons away. So,
Shout out to Bill Clinton.
yeah, yeah. So,
Mhm.
and that's where kind of my hot takes on, like non-interventionism, they kind of fall apart because the U.S. did promise Ukraine that it would help it out
Yeah.
if it gave up its nuclear weapons program, and not living up to that promise just undermines the trust, the U.S. Capability to be trusted, because say for example, Colombia would have nuclear weapons, and the Americans say like, oh no, don't worry, like just
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
denuclearize, and we'll protect you. And let's say what if Venezuela invades us, and then Americans do nothing because, oh well, we don't do
Yeah.
interventionism anymore, bro. So at that point, it's like, damn, you guys betrayed us. Like, like we're supposed to be like allies, the West, democracy, blah, blah, and you can't even stand up to that. It's like it puts the entire system in doubt. Definitely,
Mhm.
that is very true. Intrepido says, F religious liberty, everyone needs to be Catholic. Strange Love says, Kiev is being bombed right now, by the way. As we speak, I don't know. I have to see. Henry says, Obama was right to call the Ukraine a backwater gas station. Felix says, Russia has always had drastic worse living standards than the West. Intrepido says, Ukrainians are literally saying they are for freedom, talking like Westerners. Ukrainians are going to want a gay woman with purple hair as president if they win this war. Mestizo says, Kremlin's created the BS climate change agenda. Greta Thunberg is the best thing to happen to Russia's economy. That is very true. Whatever your opinion on this is, definitely the Western powers have kind of screwed themselves over because they rely so much on Russia for energy.
Yeah.
And yeah, they kind of got messed up. Intrepido says, wasn't Billy a huge Trump supporter? He learned as a Trump hat signed by him. Now Billy's virtue signaling he's against America and calls for the Latino community. Then Jose Miguel says, the conflict between Ukrainians and Russians began with the Union of Brest in the 16th century, not 1,000 years ago. Back then, they were the same people. And then Strangel says, if Colombia had nukes, they would use it on themselves. Man, I can't say we wouldn't. I can't say we wouldn't.
Yeah. Shout out to the guy who pointed out the Union of Brest.
Yo,
Yeah, Jose Miguel is a OG on this channel. Yo, what's up, man?
what's going on?
Just talking about Ukraine, World War III, maybe. I don't know what's gonna happen in like the next week, bro. It's all so crazy.
It's all good. I just don't understand why people support Russia, knowing very well like if there's an actual conflict, there's a lot of Hispanics in the United States Army, which I
Well,
found.
yeah, but I think a lot of it is you see it in the comments that you just read. It really is reactionary, right? Uh, it's easy to react to
But
what people are.
it's a dumb reaction because if you think
Yeah,
about it, gas prices are gonna spike in the United States. You live in the United States.
yeah, they are. But
Yes.
the thinking, I mean, one of the, if we're talking about energy, one of the interesting nations in all this is Germany. Germany is very reliant on Russian oil, and they're going to take a big hit. They've already come out and they've already said that we're going to stop Nord Stream 2, which is a pipeline that connects Germany to Russia, and that's going to be a big deal. But I think part of the green agenda is realizing that we can't be as dependent as we are on these countries. You know.
Correct.
I mean, you can blame Ocasio Cortez and all the loonies that want clean energy because they shut
Well,
down a lot of things in the United States.
in Germany's case, is actually something like that, wasn't it? That what is it, Green Party,
Yeah, I have a Green Party.
shut down the reactors, and that backfired on them.
But
The
you know,
Germans.
you bring up the nuclear reactors, and so naturally, I kind of looked into this. The new wave are called renewables, and what most people kind of miss out on, we're kind of used to like Tesla, powered by electric lithium batteries. We're used to the kind of windmills and the solar power and the hydro power. Very underrated is nuclear power, but not nuclear as we know it, with these kind of big plants where like Homer Simpson is working in it. I'm talking more small scale. And the technology is called SMRs, is small modular reactors. Very small nuclear reactors that you can kind of spread all around instead of having in one spot. And that is the what a lot of nations are looking at. Now, what's important is not putting all your eggs in one basket. This is where Barack Obama was spot on. And so you see America taking a multi-pronged approach. We're putting money into solar power and to wind power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you kind of need to.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Hello
Yeah,
there.
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, what's up, man?
how you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I see on social media a lot of people taking sides with either the so-called capitalist West, global homo West,
Yeah.
and the Russians, right? The Ukrainians and the Russians. Uh, but what sides are there to take on this, right? What is the reason? It seems to me that Putin, for the most part, is just taking advantage at the fact that the U.S. is demoralized politically. The dollar is inflated.
Right.
There's no. The world understands that Biden is absolutely not a figurehead. He's just there's no
charismatic symbol.
there's no symbol. There's no direction in the country. So it's all a mess. But ultimately, like I don't think there are any sides to take because the end point, the end point of a conflict between the United States and the Western powers in Russia over the Ukraine uh, is mutually assured destruction. There is no rational incentive for the West to really put its foot down on the Ukraine because it's not worth it. So
Well,
to yeah, go
So
on.
I
yeah,
want to make a few comments about that because what's been fascinating, I just saw this on my timeline. It's a report by MSNBC. It says officials believe that President Putin was surprised by the amount of intel and info that the U.S. had gathered about Russia's threat to Ukraine and was not prepared for the Biden admin to make so much of that info public. And so with social media, we kind of have this 21st century war of information where intelligence agencies are putting, this kind of intel out into the public, and that's disseminated. And then now all of a sudden, you have, this is what the Russians are planning to do. And some of that is disinfo. So they're going to invade tomorrow, and it's meant to kind of like wake people up or, that kind of thing. But
But
I
what can
bring
the
this up because
how can the Ukraine counter Russia? If Russia wants to take it, they will take it. The United States is not going to end the world for the Ukraine.
Well, I'll just briefly wrap up what I'm saying. So, kinetic warfare is kind of like fighting with guns and dropping bombs on each other. But just as important, if not more important, is intelligence. Because if you're intelligent, there's a saying: work smarter, not harder. And I think that the underrated role in this whole affair and why Ukraine is putting up a fight in the first place, apart from the fact that these are brave people, is intelligence, in particular American.
Sure, but it's still not. There are new. There is. There are military formations happening around the Ukraine of Russian forces. There are bombings happening in Kiev. This is something that's happening. This is not. This is going beyond just intelligence.
Yeah, but there's an information aspect to that even as well, because like if you're this kind of person on the street and you're hearing these bombs and these buildings blow up, a lot of that is meant to affect you, right?
Like Putin has to make a decision. He can't. He either has to take the Ukraine or he has to stand back. If he stands back, it's going to make him look. It's going to make him look bad. But
Yes.
either way, Biden benefits because now he becomes the wartime president. He gets that title now. I don't know how long the media and the globalists are gonna ride that wave, but that's what he is now. He's the wartime president, and it's a little bit concerning about how things can unfold. Nobody really knows. Hopefully, it's not nuclear war.
Yeah,
I
but
don't think they're that insane.
I'd just like to briefly say, because this gets tossed around a lot, where like the idea of the globalists, if you go to Russia and China, they have their own version of the New World Order, and
No,
they're
I understand. I'm talking about the West. They're all globalists, but they're obviously all competing, right?
they're it's like mafia families, they all agree that there should be kind of one order, but they disagree on who should be at the top of that.
I mean, I've heard that Russia is a smaller is about their economy is about the size of Italy.
Yeah.
From what from what I've hearing, the Chicoms are funding their a lot of their operations
Hmm.
of occupying the Ukraine. And I think that these these Patronistas are hysterical. Like,
Well, I mean, one scenario that we
No,
can
no, but
easily see is if this fails for Putin, it's going to play right into China's hands.
it's
And they're
quite
right next to each
pathetic. It's quite pathetic that Hispanismo has lowered to the point where you have certain individuals that have to live out their authoritative power fantasies through people like Putin.
Yeah, but I mean, it's tapping into like in prior ages. You're talking about the Templars, the Knights Templar, like these militant Christians, and that's really what Russia is kind of become. And a lot of people identify with that. On the one hand, you have like Christians that are militant. On the other hand, you have this kind of ancient Rome, ancient Greece in the form of Sparta, and they really desire that, and they see that in Putin.
Corky, I mean, look. So I've made a bit of the Ukrainian argument over here, and I'm gonna kind of switch to the Russian argument.
Yeah.
This is not just about Ukraine. This is essentially a big middle finger to the West and everything it stands for. And Ukraine just happened to be the victim in all of this, right? That's kind of like kind of like the dumbest, or like not the dumbest, but the most base level of Russian support, because these especially these past 3 years have been very, very much a complete undoing of any notion of traditional Western values. Everything's inverted. You're supposed to be pro black, pro trans, pro immigrant, pro queer, pro this thing, pro that thing.
I mean, the West has been experiencing this since 9/11 with the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. Before this, this nonsense has been going on in the mainstream and on social media.
Okay, but Corky, but so here's the thing. So that same American empire that bombs Iraq also undermines British integrity by telling its black residents that that Britain is in a uniquely racist country and you have to dismantle whiteness in Britain and things like that. And people outside of the West, or who don't like the West, see that and they say, see, the West is this great satanic entity, especially the US, that wants to undermine all nations and wants to make it just like them. I mean, look, a lot of these Hispanistas also supported Gaddafi. They support Assad. They support, obviously, Ortega. They support Maduro and that type of thing. So anyone who goes against the U.S. has their support, because the U.S. is a continuation of Great Britain, of the British Empire, and the British Empire was always at odds with the Spanish Empire. And the U.S. has always had issues with its Hispanic neighbors down south. You have the issue of especially Nicaragua with Sandino. And
yeah, but I think they support. A lot of them will support all of this U.S. Opposition with this presumption that the U.S. is just stagnant. That the U.S. will always be a vessel of the globalists and of Britain and on all of this. I think that's just a very defeatist perspective.
Right, because that's all we've ever known. You know, I can't think of a time where the U.S. wasn't either interventionist, like in a neocon way, or woke. I've always lived through an era where the U.S. was like that. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense for people to think like that if they're a bit younger, to kind of see the U.S. as completely unsalvageable. Like this thing, you know, it may have been good or bad before, but we know for a fact that this thing just cannot stand. Like it will destroy everything in its path, and that's what a lot of us have perceived because we're so young and we've only ever seen the U.S.
Um,
like this.
yeah,
I mean,
I mean, you can.
I don't think that endorsing Ukraine getting run over by Russia is a rational is a rational point. I think that the Ukrainians should be independent of the West and of Russia. They should have their own say of where they want their nation to be. Unfortunately, they're getting pulled one way or the other.
Yeah, and I have something
They
to
don't
say
have
about it.
true
Like,
sovereignty, and they're probably not going to be able to develop their true culture or ethno. Right? They're it's tragic.
yeah, I was gonna say what you say about the United States is right, but what makes you think that Chinese, the Russians, or all these other people are gonna be any different if they have a sphere of influence near you? And you can see that with Cuba. You can see that with Nicaragua and Venezuela because they have anti-American influences and they're still shitholes. You know what I mean? At least not culturally, but
Right, right. So, yeah, but so that's the counter argument. The counter argument, you know, especially Noel would say that yeah, we're poor, but at least we're not gay. You know, we may be a shithole, but money is not important, and you just have a capitalist mindset, and all you care about is your possessions. But at least we're traditional. At least we have family values. At least we're not vendidos. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the argument. I'm just letting you guys know what the argument actually is. Like, so we don't straw man. You know what I'm saying? Like.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, you're still gonna be poor and broken, living in
I mean,
mud.
I mean, like I'm just telling you guys what the argument is.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah. But
Nicaragua
my
is
idea of
And I
the
think
United
what's
States.
interesting in the middle of all this is China with their Belt and Road initiative, right? China's currently in different parts of the world, and they're working with people, they're building their roads and all that kind of thing. But what I try to remind people, if you want to get an idea of China rule, look at China themselves. So you can have a country that moves in and is an ally and builds good relations, but then once they get into power and they turn you into a colony, everything changes.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna be honest, guys. Like I'm not too afraid of Russia per se, except how they mess with Venezuela and that affects us personally. So I actually have a personal reason to not like Russia, but I don't mind them too much. But China is definitely the major enemy for sure. They're a very shifty sort of group that I don't
Yeah,
like the
they're
Belt
they're
and Road
they're
Initiative.
playing the long game, but this is where I just have to step in and really stress the role of intelligence, right? Like, there's been a lot of talk about economic sanctions, but I think to myself, what if big tech got together, right? Think of the Apple iPhone that is so common around the world. What if they stop working if you're in Russia? Right? Google, like these services that we, Amazon Web Servers, right? These kind of services that we're used to. Um, but that already ties into developments when it comes to information, right? Like social media allows people to get information across from one place to another in almost instantaneously. And like I brought up the role that this has played in terms of thwarting Russia because they have their intelligence, and then America's just like, airing out their dirty laundry, and that gets rid of the element of surprise because the Ukrainians can just log on Twitter and see what the Russians are up to, right? So I think in terms of hegemony, a lot of people are well intentioned and they're kind of reacting towards American rule, but China is kind of like the second place, but they still have so much to go, right?
Guys, you know what just hit me in regards to the Biden the Biden presidency? God forbid he fucking pops daisies and Kamala Harris is like the new figure, right?
Hmm.
The narrative that the media will push is that well, the Russians are oppressing the Ukrainians and they're anti-feminist, and next you'll hear like Kamala and the group and the media heads in the U.S. and the Twitter mobs. Oh well, they're anti-feminists. We need Kamala to teach the Russians a lesson, and she's like, yeah, we need to meddle in. We need to flirt with nuclear war with the Russians to teach them to teach them the power of feminism, right? That's very possible, you know. I don't think that's out of the picture.
Yo, guys. So let me show you guys what would be
As
a good
insane as it sounds.
right. So let me show you guys what I would consider a good pro-Russia take, like something that that can kind of make sense to me as to why someone would support it. So this guy called Bardil said this isn't about Russia versus Ukraine. This is about a European nation fighting against a neo-Bolshevist horde seeking to conquer Europe. Ukraine is fighting for all of Europe. And then Eurasian Conquest says, this is the most clownish schizo idiocy I've seen today. Stop transposing Anglo-Nazi claptrap onto the European continent, kind of implying that Russia being part of Ukraine is about as natural as you breathing. You know, this is just the West, not understanding something and just kind of applying their own value.
What's been interesting in this conflict is how this has really been one of the first that I can think of global conflicts where people from all around the world are chiming in, mainly using American social media platforms. At least that's what we have access to. And what you see a lot is people kind of projecting their own situation onto the current conflict.
Right. And so here's an example of. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's an example of a bad take. Like, this is just a really bad take from Billy that says, Islamic fighters of the Chechen Special Battalion were seen in the forest near Kiev. They will also be playing a role in annexing the Ukraine, it seems. This is what
I'm pretty sure that our friend Billy wishes that he was right there, right in the front lines.
Independent of that, this is, and I think I even tweeted about it. This is like, oh, you think Russia is base? Well, guess what? Now Russian Muslims are gonna kill Ukrainian Christians, and you're gonna call that base because your mind can only ever function on this very dumb binary that this binary breaks down very much in this conflict.
Yeah, but the
guys,
the binary
it's mutually
is when Trump's in charge, it's orange man bad. And then when Trump's not in charge or someone on the left is bad, thus the other guy's good.
Here it is, guys. Yay, it's mutually assured destruction. I'll flee to Nicaragua if the U.S. drafts me, but I sure as hell would love to be on the front lines with Russia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just
I'm actually so glad that I'm out of the army like next month. I got perfect timing, bro.
Yeah, a lot of my coworkers are like Marine Corps and Army vet guys, and yeah, they're like half of them are saying that they'll flee. Half of them will be like, you know what, we're just gonna take advantage of the female services that the Ukraine has to offer before it all goes to hell, at least, right?
And the funny thing about that is that there's been reports. One of the key aspects in any war is morale. If you can rally the troops, you can kind of get the most out of them. There's been reports of Russians kind of like being demoralized. Like a lot of these guys are young kids and they've been conscripted. You're drafted and you go out to fight, and a lot of them just lay down their arms, right? Low morale, they give up. It's not worth dying for, and that's a risk that the American regime runs if they come up with a pretext of war and send more Americans. Is that you're going to have these Americans who don't believe in your cause and are more likely to defect, and that's a big risk. that Russia is experiencing right now.
Right. Um, Yo, Chastizo.
Here,
Chastizo.
Yo,
Yo, what's up, bro?
what's up, man? It's good.
What do you think about this whole issue?
Oh man, it's sad, bro. It's sad. We need to be making love, not war, man. It's fucked up.
All right, hold up. Let me just let me drop you in for a bit. I'm gonna just
Huh?
yo
Hello.
guys.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah. Yo, what's up, man?
All good, bro. I'm sorry. I'm starting from my headphones. I was talking with my family.
All
Uh,
right, cool.
so what are we talking about right now? Ukraine, Russia, abortion, everything has
No,
been fucked up. It's pair of days.
no, Ukraine, Russia, bro. I forgot. We should do the abortion thing tomorrow. If you're down for tomorrow, I'm definitely.
Well, I don't know. Maybe tomorrow I will leave it with in my salsa class. So
Got it.
no, but yeah, we could do it on the weekend. No worries. Our Ukraine, Russia, right?
Yeah, so we're doing Ukraine, Russia.
Well,
We've been
it is getting really, really messed up right now.
Hey, Klaus,
like,
bro. I'm gonna be right back, dude.
all right.
Well, from what I have seen, well, we need to take something in consideration. Uh, First of all, Putin said that he would not, that he would sue for peace, and that he will retire his troops if Ukraine recognized Donetsk and Lugansk as independent republics. That happened like a week ago. So that is the first thing we need to consider. He moved troops months ago to the border so far as from Siberia. So it was really obvious he was gonna do something. Like this man is not gonna move his troops out of the border with China just for nothing. So it was really obvious something was gonna happen. The other thing that needs to be in consideration when you go far back in time is what happened in Kazakhstan and what happened in the Maidan. In Kazakhstan, you see that at the beginning of the year, uh, that there was a tried coup d'etat, but it was a failed one because they tried to depose the president there, and the president was an ally of Putin. So it was a failed color revolution. That is what happened exactly right there. So you saw that on Christmas, on January the 7th, Orthodox Christmas, you saw an attempt to take control by the United States of Asia Central Asia, and it was not liked neither by Putin nor by China. So you saw a special forces, special operations in Kazakhstan. So that was avoided. The coup d'état was not done. The power structure remained there, and they were thankful towards Putin. In the Maidan, which is what happened in Ukraine, you saw the position of the president, which was pro-Putin, and you get the comedian, which is literally a comedian. That is what is this guy, uh, Zelensky. He was put it on power. It is like Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a freaking actor. Like Ronald Reagan did have no expertise on politics or whatever.
Bro, he was governor.
I mean,
California.
acting is
He ain't
is a
be
large
everywhere.
part of being a politician, right? So he fit a big part of that.
Yeah, being a politician is part of being a comedian because that is the only thing you need to do with modern politics: laugh, or either you're gonna cry. So with
or
that,
be an actor.
yeah, and with that out of the way, you can see that Putin moved his troops. There was a tried attempt, a failed one in Kazakhstan, and there was a coup d'état that happened not so long ago, like 5 years ago in Ukraine. So that there was a really panic and hysteria in Moscow all of January because of what was going to happen. They thought that from my Russian sources and my parish, I am an Orthodox Christian. I have Russians on my parish all Sundays. There was a big hysteria on Monday because they thought either we'll launch an attack or we're gonna be attacked, and that is real because there is a ton of Russia in the American bases, and when the Iron Curtain fell down in 1991, there was a promise by the German Chancellor to the Russian Prime Minister that there will be no more NATO bases eastward. What happened? The contrary. You have bases on the Baltics, on Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, Poland. You have American bases all over the place. So Russia felt threatened, and it is normal because did you have this ton of concentration of American bases near you, and you have this instability. So it is pretty normal that you feel threatened. Now, why what happened in the last couple of days? Putin tried to recognize the independence of Donetsk and Lugansk, and if Zelensky recognized it, nothing will happen. He would just take in Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk, and that's it. But Zelensky denied it to to recognize the independence of these two republics. You know that the system that Russia uses, their states are called republics. The war fell on because it was seen as an aggression by Ukraine to not recognize their independence. This was done too with Serbia and NATO when the Americans recognized independence of Kosovo and of all of Yugoslavia, and they used that as an excuse to attack Serbia and take part of Yugoslavia. So basically, Putin mocked the Americans by doing the same tactics that they did to another Orthodox country in the 90s, which is Serbia. Which is a really good move, to be honest. It was really funny. Well, if it wasn't for people dying. What is Putin doing right now in Ukraine? He's launching very specific attacks. He's not attacking too much civilians, from what I have heard. Mostly, you can see videos that are from back in the day, 2 to 3 years ago on Crimea, or like 5 years ago, or even videos in China. So there is a ton of misinformation. Putin is attacking military bases. He's attacking the infrastructure, so that anyway, if he loses the war, he is sure that no nuclear reactors and no military bases can be functional in the country. He's targeting military places specifically. From the view of the people, you can see that this is the same that was done by Russia and Syria with Bashar al-Assad. Because Putin, with his experience, what happened first in Georgia, he won that war. He won the war in Chechnya against Kadyrov, which is basically a Muslim warlord that was killed, and he killed Kadyrov, and then he made friends with his son and became one of his allies, which is one of the the craziest thing I have heard. Like your dad gets killed, and then you get make friends with your dad's killer. It needs to be really really insane, and he's doing that in Ukraine. And what happened in Syria is repeating itself. I think what is going to happen to Ukraine is like a type of blitzkrieg of shock and awe tactics of a really fast type of war, because Russia is not a healthy state, to be honest. Poor economy, bad infrastructure, bad demographics, has a ton of enemies on its own type. There is Putin is getting old. He has ruled for 20 years. So Russia is kind of a state of emergency, as is the American system and as is China. China has contamination problems, environmental problems, demographic problems. China is getting encircled by the Americans too. China has a problem with Muslims, as Russia does too, and America is getting that too. So you can see that the three great forces, because Europe, to be honest, militarily is meaningless. The three great forces have like this sort of equal problems, but America has one more burden. America lost to Afghanistan like 3-4 months ago, and it was really awful. America lost to men on their sandals that don't know how to speak more than one language and that live in caves. So that says a ton about American military and quote unquote technological superiority. Now, what is the problem with Ukraine and why Ukraine cannot be an Afghanistan? Ukraine is a very plain country. Ukraine is a very large steppe. It doesn't have mountains or jungles. On a place like Colombia, where Klaus and I come from, we have a ton of jungle. We have a really big, big mountains. You can hit yourself, then you can attack the enemy, and that leads to a very good place to form guerrilla warfare. And that's what happened in Spain too after Napoleon conquered it. When Joseph the First of Bonaparte, Jose Primero Bonaparte, the Spaniards, because they have really really small mountains, they could hit themselves and they could attack and make hit and run tactics. In Nicaragua, you see this everywhere where there is really big mountains, small mountains, and where there is jungle. Ukraine doesn't have neither. Ukraine is very plain, and you have mountains very eastward near Poland. So what I think is gonna happen, he's gonna continue to attack military targets. He's gonna send special forces. He has not sent the full of his capacities. He's just like testing what is going to happen, making a shock and awe, and trying to make a treaty. I think that Ukraine is gonna maybe, uh, in the best of chances, if Putin wants that, I think he wants that, going to sign for neutrality, as what happened with Finland. That Finland during the Soviet era signed neutrality, so that they could not have nuclear capacity, nor they would join NATO. And to this day, Finland didn't join NATO and doesn't have nuclear capacity. But there's something special about Ukraine. I think that because there are more Russians, he's gonna part Ukraine. He's gonna divide it, like what happened with Mexico in the Mexican American War. That what is going to happen is it's gonna be divided up. If Mexico was divided on the Rio Grande, and the Americans took everything, California, Arizona, Texas, they took everything. I think that is going to happen with Ukraine. So Ukraine is gonna be divided up, like in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Same thing is gonna happen. I hope that it is really fast. And in the best of scenarios, I hope that the president surrenders himself really, really fast, because this is gonna get really, really bad, to be honest. I'll get into that part. There is, as I told you, Putin is friends with Kadyrov. Kadyrov, Kadyrov. He's a Chechen warlord, a Muslim warlord, and he has maybe one of the best trained military in the world, to be honest. Like he trained Syrians, Iraqis. Like the Chechen War was like a model for the Muslim soldier in the Middle East, and to launching to fighting itself with Americans. So he sent Muslims into Ukraine to fight the Nazis in uh, in Ukraine. I am an Orthodox Christian, so yeah, this is me. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, no trouble. Uh, there are Islam is paganism, and National Socialism is paganism. That's out of the way. And the forces of Ukraine that are basically called Azov, ACOV, as you can see on the screen right now, they are literally national socialists in the things that they support. Not only the social system, but all the paganism behind it that Hitler did, and the Thule Society, Thule. You can look about it. Hitler was a Catholic at the beginning of his life. He died a pagan. So yeah, you can tell there was a lot of paganism behind National Socialism, a ton of witchcraft and magic that is really well documented. And everything that I am saying here, you can look for it, and it is pretty open, no conspiracy theories, just plain facts. That is the thing with Russia and the war right now. There is no based Orthodox Tsar fighting the West. No, it is literally an attack. Biden doesn't give any aids. They fucking solo. There is no base Russian Tsar conquering the West. No, Putin is fighting really, really nasty by using the Chechens and the Muslim, and the Ukrainians are being really, really nasty by using the National Socialist. But that says something. What it tells us is that basically they are both desperate, and they both want a quick shock and awe tactics, blitzkrieg. They are using their best of their best. So if the more the war goes on, the more it will be hard for Russia, because Russia does not have a good infrastructure. Russia does not have a good economy. Its economy fell off like 50% this morning.
So now they're
So
like Serbia tier.
yeah, yeah. So it will be better for Russia just to go on, to sign the treaty, and then just just be at peace with each other. Because yeah, you can see that even from Colombia, that is more or less dancing with Russia. Colombia declared a formal war on Ukraine. Even the ecumenical patriarch from Constantinople and Patriarch Kirill, they are both said that it would be time for peace. So he has basically no support from the church, no support from outside, and he's getting a ton of backlash in Russia. There are being ladies being taken to prison for protesting in St. Petersburg, in Moscow. So this is very bold. This is very bold. Uh, like this is history. I don't know what else to say. It is very nasty from side and side. So those are my comments, Klaus.
Thanks a lot, bro. Very appreciated. Jose Miguel, I don't know if you want to talk about this. Seems like you have a
Yeah,
perspective on.
yeah. I'll just point out that when it comes to measuring, what do you call it, economies, etc., with GDP, when it's measured in, if they're measuring it in dollars, then that's kind of pointless when they say, Russia's economy's collapsed in half. Because the question is, well, has Russia's industrial capacity collapsed in half? No, it's still the same. So the other problem with someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Corky, talked about how Russia's economy is comparable to Italy. There are actually two things about that statement that I find hilarious. One is, so Italy's actual economy is double than the advertised value, because half of Italy's economy is essentially on the black market. Italy's a fascinating case study of alternative markets in a modern society. Also, in the case of where they say, for example, Russia's economy being the size of Texas, the problem with this, one is Russia has far more industrial capacity than Texas does. Two, GDP counts debt as wealth, like as an asset. So essentially, a society that takes out tons and tons of debt, their GDP is going to go higher. Especially if you have in particular, deficit government spending will just skyrocket your GDP. So, essentially, the reason why, the fact is, given that, if you want to have a more accurate measure of wealth, you have to subtract out, especially when you're talking about GDP, you have to subtract out debt loads. So I remember I was looking at numbers for how much actual wealth growth has there been in the United States. And if you take per capita GDP and you subtract out per capita debt loads, essentially you get no positive wealth growth in the United States on a per capita basis since 1976. So the thing to take into account with Russia is Russia had paid off their debts, the debts of the Soviet Union, and they've been running surpluses for a while. So when you pay off debts on a GDP basis, that looks like you're shrinking your economy. So, again, what do you call it? It's, in terms of economic standpoint, I agree that, Russian infrastructure is weak, especially in the Far East. But it has been, improving in the West. Their biggest problem is demographics. However, I'm betting over the next 10 years that's actually going to improve. Because in particular, the Russian Orthodox Church is copying what the Georgian Orthodox Church has done, and the Georgian Orthodox Church has managed to turn around the birth rates while being opposed by the puppet government that rules Georgia the entire time. So Patriarch Elijah or Illyria in Georgian, he's essentially, for all purposes, practically a living saint with what he's done in that country, with the complete and total reversal of their birth rates. So the Russian Orthodox Church has seen what works in Georgia, and they've since the past 2 years they've started applying those principles, trying to do the same in Russia. So, and I suspect they will have the same positive benefits. So in the long run, their demographics solution will be solved, but they are still in dire straits in that regard currently. In terms of the conflict itself, yeah, I just know I don't think America is going to be committing troops to defense for Ukraine.
I mean, how can the United States even maintain an occupation?
Exactly.
We don't have a warrior class anymore because and if we do, they've all been. Where are we going to have a warrior class when the majority of young Americans aren't even having children? What's going to be the motivation for most young men to go to Russia and to go to the Ukraine and fight when they don't have any families or authority to fight over in the United States?
So that trans rights can be all over Russia. I will fight and die so that trans can be in Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah. So in terms of bias, like Lucho mentioned,
Well, it's the same thing with the Russians. The only advantage that they have is that they're right next to the Ukraine, but they also have declining birth rates. It's a global problem.
There are a couple things. So in terms of like, what is the short-term strategic goals of Russia? What are the long-term strategic goals? And what is the overall ideological bent? So in terms of short-term strategic goals, you had the heavy bombardments going on of the two breakaway republics, and both of them. What do you call it? There was plenty of evidence that America was providing satellite data for their aiming their artillery. So that's the short-term stuff. Long-term stuff, there is quite a lot of evidence that Russia is not only hit military installations, they've hit a bunch of biolabs, which are American-owned and operated. And that's the thing about, I know Lucho had mentioned the color revolution the U.S. launched in Kazakhstan, that Russia assisted the Kazakhs in putting down. Part of that, in that conflict, there was actually turns out there's a bunch of biolabs there run by the Americans as well that probably were involved in developing bioweapons. So essentially, you have this the longer term strategic goals. You have the issue of America developing weapons of biological weapons on the border of Russia, in Kazakhstan for sure, and apparently in Ukraine. And I was actually looking at the U.S. Embassy's website, and what was crazy is they actually said, yeah, no, we have all these American biolabs in Ukraine all over the place. And so I confirmed there are actual biolabs there, even though it's now being denied. However, on the embassy website, they described them as being for containing threats. And I was wondering, interesting. I wonder, are they containing disease threats as they claim, or are they trying to contain Russia? So I'll let people guess on that one. So that's the long term.
Well, that's not a mystery. Of course, the United States has military weapons and coordinations around Russia's border. It's
exactly. So essentially, you have a case where I know Putin and Russia did not use that as their official declaration of war, but I'll say the weapons of mass destruction this time are probably real.
It's not going to go there because I don't think the West has any incentive to keep the Ukraine. It's not that valuable.
Well, you would say that there is
risk mutually assured.
I mean, what would be the backlash from the other Baltic nations that are just as much as the backwater and a fake country as Ukraine is? So I'm talking about Lithuania and neighboring, and perhaps Russian wants let's say a bridge from Leningrad to east.
Well, selling weapons. What is the America's first business? Selling weapons. So that now that everyone is threatened, that everyone has fear, everyone doesn't know what to do, America's gonna sell weapons to Lithuania, Lithuania is gonna to Latvia, is gonna send weapons to Poland, to Romania.
Yeah, but do you think let's say hypothetically,
but that's a very effective war strategy in an occupation.
What's next for Putin after he restores the borders of the Imperial Russia, 1914?
No, he's not gonna do that.
Well, what's next?
Well, I think that he's just gonna break Ukraine in two, and after that he's gonna secure a treaty so that they don't have any more military capacities, or a reduced one, like a Treaty of Versailles, I don't know how to say in English, sorry, or a Guadalupe Hidalgo. What happened with Mexico in the Mexican American War? He's gonna break it
Versailles.
off. Versailles, yeah, sorry. I'm just thinking in Spanish and English, and it's getting like a really big mess up. So yeah, he's gonna break up Ukraine, and then he's gonna sign a treaty so that there may be peace. There may be no military capacities, or no big military capacities in Ukraine, and he's gonna, yeah, basically, America. What benefits America from this? Selling weapons. Who is the number one weapons exporter on the world? America.
Lucha is correct on terms of the treaty ends. Breaking up Ukraine is definitely an end goal. Disarming it. I mean, he even said it. The demilitarization of it, the denazification. He wanted to wipe out the Azov battalion in particular. I got friends and parish members from both sides, who are Ukrainian as well as Russian, and the Azov battalion is well known for martyring clergy, etc. There's a whole sordid history there. Yeah, the thing is, in terms of ideological bent, I was reading one of Putin's speeches from a while ago, and he very much draws on Alexander Solzhenitsyn and a couple other Russian thinkers, but who see the Russians, the Belarus, and the Orthodox Ukrainians as brothers in arms, one people group that shouldn't have been separated apart. So if at most, I'd see him taking up to the Dnieper, however you pronounce that river's name, up to the middle of Ukraine, because the population east of that, they are massively Russian. They are in what do you call it? They're also massively Orthodox, and they tend to be more pro-Russian already, pro-Russian to neutral. Western Ukraine would be a nightmare for the Russians to hold on to, especially the Banderista part. Of Ukraine, Galicia, Volnytsin, etc. They're just super anti-Russia, super neo-Nazi, super anti-Orthodox too. And the fact is, even given the number of troops that Russia had amassed, including the ones they moved over from the Far East, they do not have enough troops to actually occupy Ukraine. So that occupation isn't a goal. They're not going to pull, like, what do you call it? Vlad has learned from what Russia did in Afghanistan, as well as watching America, what they did in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria, and he's not going to be trying to repeat that.
Well, yeah, and this goes into the selling of arms. Like, if you were to arm every Ukrainian citizen, right? A lot of people have thrown that solution. If Biden was smart, if the United States was smart, they would probably just arm every Ukrainian citizen, like a Second Amendment arms brandishment, and it would be.
I don't know.
It would be
maybe.
it would be extremely complicated to occupy them, right?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. You gotta take something into account. It is not the same to have a gun, to know how to have a gun, how to handle a battalion, and how to take that battalion into battle. Maybe because I am not American and I am here in Colombia, I see that there are a ton of people that have guns and they don't know how to use them. So you will need training, you will need experience, and if you take a civilian with a gun against a
You
battalion,
have millions of civilians with ARs, man. It doesn't matter
And they're
how
trained.
many
Yeah. So like that's the thing.
bullets
So
are going to fly and people are going to die. It's going to be incredibly hard to occupy anything like that.
But the other thing too is, in the case of the Ukrainian people, most of the Ukrainian people are the idea that Ukraine's going to launch. I know Lucho had mentioned the geographic obstacles to the guerrilla war being in Ukraine. It's completely and totally flat, no mountains, no jungles, no forests like in Spain. The second part of that is in order for you need leadership that would inspire guerrillas to actually fight. And the fact is, the Ukrainian people for the past 32 years have been plundered by their ruling class. Like, Ukraine is so dirt poor compared to the rest of Europe. Like, their wealth levels are like your average Ukrainian is as wealthy as your typical like sub-Saharan African. Last time I checked, like it's such a
they're the second poorest on IMF or World Bank. Depending where you check, they're usually the poorest European country.
Exactly, and they do not have this massive industry. Like, so while Russia, like on terms of like GDP measurements, they're as big as Texas. proportional. If their industrial capacity is far greater than that of Ukraine, and Russia is far less plundered than Ukraine in comparison. Likewise, so again, like what Ukrainian elite are there that's going to inspire the Ukrainian people, especially given the conflict among the Ukrainian people themselves. Like you have the Orthodox versus Union conflict. You have the Patronistas versus the pro-Russian groups. You have multiple levels of conflict within the country itself.
You think they might unite though, for fighting Russia?
No. When you already have, as you mentioned, a substantial minority that's already Russian, like the fact is, like, those two breakaway republics are in excess of 90% Russian. They're not going to be fighting their own people.
Oh no, sorry, no,
No.
I meant like no, I thought you meant like Banderistas and like, more left wing Ukrainians, like, not neo-Nazi types. Do you think they might join just to like fight the Russian encroachment?
They can. It's just, what's the quality of leadership they're going to have, and also, what quality of even if they have quality leaders, would the U.S. actually employ them / use them? That's the question.
Cool. So yeah, guys. So here's the thing about why Ukraine is so difficult to kind of have a black or white opinion on. It's like, if you don't know about the neo-Nazi situation in Ukraine, or how Russia Russified Ukraine by force during the Soviet era, specifically more like towards the east, then you don't really know about the situation, and it's kind of difficult for you to understand it. And a lot of people think that people pointing out the neo-Nazi thing is kind of like a gotcha. I mean, I guess it can be, but it's more important to kind of put it as a contextual sort of piece to better understand what's going on in Ukraine, because we can't just paint Ukraine as this very innocent sort of oh, we did nothing and we're getting invaded by Russia type of thing, but we also can't paint Russia as like, oh yeah, Ukraine and Russia, they're practically the same thing, so Russia's just taking over their land back thing, or whatever. This is a very complicated issue. Uh, just
Yeah.
There's gonna be losers on both sides. There's gonna be lives lost on both sides. And we should pray for the innocents. We should pray that.
Yeah. I remember I was on my parish the last Sunday, and the priest on his homily he talked about Russia and Ukraine, and there were two Russian women that yelled at him. I have never seen women yell at my priest. Then I saw two Russian women yelling at him. It was so like you could feel that they feel the tension, that they are really really into it. And yeah, as Jose Miguel says, there are various problems from both nations that are not being taken into account.
Yeah,
Uh,
as far as I'm concerned, these aren't problems that the U.S. should be getting involved in. But
yeah,
Biden's approval ratings are falling, and so I guess the establishment wants to make him a wartime president in order for him to lean on this conflict, and build something up, build some sort of image up. I don't think it's going to work, but I think that's what's going on here.
I understand why they're doing it because, I studied international relations at Carnegie Mellon, and political science, and also engineering studies. But one of the things I remember in my American government class is, if you're a president and you're not popular, best thing you can do for your popularity is start a war. If you
Yeah.
want an excellent example, George W. Bush, like half the country hated him when he invaded Afghanistan. 97% approval rating. Like he had no president has had as high an approval rating as George W. Bush.
Well, the country
This
wasn't
is like
so.
post 9/11.
Correct.
The country, the people in the country, they weren't so politically demoralized and divided. There wasn't this inflation.
Yep.
We thought that we had a vision of where the country had to go geopolitically at that time.
I would counter argue with the Great Depression because you did have rampant inflation then, you did have a whole host of economic problems, and yet Americans after Pearl Harbor were very very enthusiastic in serving in the war machine.
Yeah, but this shouldn't be America's problem as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
Ultimately, I mean, a couple of Nazis in rural areas of Ukraine, it's not rational to risk mutually assured destruction. That's insanity.
That I agree.
yeah, and what you see is that right now is happening like a change of balance on the international scale. There's no more unipolarity as the U.S. is leading everyone forward. It will happen in 2001 when I was born. But you see, like that there is like a change of things, that there is a balance right now, as everyone is trading right now with China. Europe is dependent on Russia's oil, and Europe right now doesn't have any gas, and oil prices are going up there too because of the sanctions that are being imposed, and because the Germans were so dumb to take their nuclear power off, and the French, which have their nuclear power, have the capacity to negotiate. That's why you saw Macron speaking with Putin, because they have the nuclear capacity, and they are basically the leaders of right now of the European Union, as the Greens in Germany are leading it to dependence. So yeah,
What's the United States relationship with NATO? The Biden administration relationship with NATO. How is that going right now? Because
NATO
there's
is America. Like there's no distinction. Like all the other NATO states have no say in
Specifically,
anything.
Anglo America.
Exactly.
NATO is an Anglo American problem.
well, but you also,
Exactly.
I mean, the Germans and the French are a factor, right?
Now, within NATO, like actual, like what NATO does no. Germany displayed leading up to this conflict. Germany displayed that they will just simply do. Well, to be frank, they essentially they've signaled that they're going to be nothing more than America's bitch. The reason being, when you look at the Nord Stream 2 project, so Germany, Schultz, decided to shut down essentially shut down Nord Stream 2 indefinitely, which meant that as the gas contracts wind down with Russia, with the pipeline that goes through Ukraine, essentially Schultz has condemned Germany to being forced to deindustrialize and not even be able to generate enough heat to get through the winter. Germany is now completely dependent on natural gas that's going to come from the United States, and there's not enough capacity of ships to ship natural gas from the U.S. to Germany. So that's the crazy thing about this. We may actually get to see what happens to a first world nation that suddenly doesn't have power and is forced to deindustrialize. And it'll be fascinating to see, just from a point of intellectual curiosity.
and from outside, if you are in Germany, it's gonna be really awful, because you're gonna see unemployment, you're gonna see shutting down of energy, of public services. From
Well,
outside,
it
it
was
will
going to
be great.
happen eventually. I mean, the Europeans are not having children. Eventually, it's all going to collapse, regardless. Who's gonna maintain the economy? Who's gonna take care of the old? It's going to go to shit.
A lot of those old are going to freeze to death. Like if not this winter, like next winter. That's the crazy part. So and that's the other part too, because I know I have friends who live in Germany, but I knew a guy who he was trying to get like a wood burning stove in his own place, and I forget which part of Germany he was in, but it was practically impossible, which just blew my mind. Like he had to depend on the electrical grid in order to get heat. So now, if that's going to remain the case, they're completely screwed.
I mean, what's Germany's solution is to ship in more Asian and Middle Asian migrants into the country.
They need more engineers, bro.
No, no, that's the only way that they can manage. I mean, a lot of the white nationalists like to talk about, oh well, and I empathize with them, but they talk about, oh, like the German people need to stand up, the Swedish people need to stand up, but you guys aren't having children. How are they going to maintain their infrastructure and their economies and what have you if they don't import people in? It's going to collapse.
Either way, it's
Yeah,
going to collapse.
yeah.
That's the thing.
There's gonna
That
be
that's what I find interesting about what he said about Patriarch Ilya, because that is right. Patriarch Ilya took the declining birth rates in Georgia, and they boosted out 40%, 20% first year, 40% the second year. And yeah, he said it right. Like Patriarch Kirill is having talks with the Georgian patriarch, and he said that he's gonna double the children that want to be aborted. And you can see that abortion rates in Russia are falling down month by month, year by year. And yeah, in the long run, inshallah, God willing, that there will be higher birth rates. But right now, that the Muslims are the one that are taking up the lead on
Inshallah.
that. Yeah, inshallah, God willing.
Oh, they're the ones that are going. They're the ones that are going to be in the driver's seat a few decades from now, as far as demographics are concerned, and in that part of the world.
And there is something that I found really interesting. You can see that on Siberia, you have a ton of people on the Chinese border, and you have no people in Siberia. So right now, Russia is itself in power towards the east, towards the west. Sorry, but it needs to take care of its back. Sorry. So it will be really interesting to see what happens with Siberia as more and more pressure is done by the Chinese demographics.
Correct. That's something that I mean, besides getting the birth rates up, that's something that the Russian government is trying to take care of. They're trying to repopulate towns and that were completely wiped out by the Soviets way back when, with their moving people around in the Far East. So, like right now, like for Russians and even Russians who are living outside Russia, like you can actually easily get free land, like free 40 acres in the Far East, but you have to live there. You got to make
Yeah,
it work.
I think I've heard this statistic that that a population below 1.8 a birth rate, nations with like a birth rate, civilizations with a birth rate below 1.8, there's never been one that has ever recovered.
1.8,
So
1.7. Right.
yeah, that's not exactly true. There's only one that has, and that is the nation of Georgia. So their what was the birth rate? It was less than 1.0 at the collapse of the Soviet Union.
I'm curious. Speaking about Georgia, you guys know anything about Hungary and anything of what Orban has accomplished there? Have they had any success in?
He's had some success in turning things around, but they're still below.
Not Japan, or you by chance was in the Gulf.
Like honestly,
Hungary has had any success because they've implemented something similar.
So the thing is, so in the case of Hungary, Hungary is using financial and tax incentives to get the birth rates up. Georgia is interesting because, and Israel's another interesting case. But Georgia and Israel both are the two nations that have turned around, declining birth rates. In the case of Georgia, severely low birth rates. In the case of both, religion is the primary factor. In Georgia, you also had state opposition. Israel, you had state support, but Georgia's really interesting because you have absolute state opposition to the church. So, like Patriarch Illyria, when he first became patriarch, like you actually would stand outside the abortion clinic in Sibili, and he would offer women that he would adopt their kids if they wouldn't abort. And so he has like 20,000 godchildren. He actually adopted a bunch of kids. There was only 2 monasteries. I think was it 2 monasteries, a convent, and 70 parishes in all of Georgia when he became patriarch, and he de facto turned them all into essentially orphanages. It's just mind blowing. So like without any state support whatsoever, Georgia got above replacement level when they were literally going to disappear in 60 years.
Well, this is the problem: is the family dependence on the state is the reason why birth rates are declining. A woman in the United States, she can get with a man. He can invest money, time, and emotion into her, and she can just divorce him and rely on the state and take out belongings.
There's some truth to that. The thing is, what do you call it? Chicken and egg. It's more, like people say, like, hey, women divorce when if their man declines, financially speaking, and the thing is that's a general thing that fails to capture the full picture because I was in the top 10% wealth wise and I lost everything literally, and my wife didn't leave me. She stayed with me and she supported me through the whole thing. We're back on our feet again, now 2 years post COVID, the COVID shutdown when I lost everything.
Well, yeah, you know what they say, if a woman really is for you if she sticks by you when you're at your lowest, so you have a real one.
Yeah, but the other part too is it's also like as a guy you have to have balls. Like forgive me, like I grew up. Well, when I grew up in New York, I grew up in a Filipino neighborhood, but I was living in Pennsylvania for 7 years, and essentially a lily white county, which is now apparently like at least young people wise now like a third Hispanic. But the like half of my friends, like about half of my friends, their parents divorced. And yeah, most of the cases it was the mom no fault divorcing. But even those cases, it's like I look at their dads and it's like, bro, your dad just needed to have a pair of balls. Like that's there is a failure on that part as well. Because just because the option for blowing up the marriage is there, doesn't mean that a woman is automatically going to take that.
Yeah, but you have to understand the marriage laws incentivize that. They, in many cases, almost encourage women to divorce men for anything.
Correct.
Like they initiate 80% of the divorces, so there's little There's very little. There's more and more minimal authority that men actually have in this country when it comes to maintaining a family.
Legally, yes, but I will say is authority itself between people. Like people are naturally hierarchical. Like it is natural for people to recognize someone as their superior, to cede authority to them over themselves. And the thing is, women do that. I mean, I've seen my wife do that with me. I have friends' wives. I've seen them. Their wives do that with them. Like if your focus as a man, is on, what do you call it, being worthy of ruling. Like the fact is, a decent, even it doesn't have to be a great woman, just like a decent woman, like she will fall into that. I know the pickup artists use the term frame, but there is this concept of, I know like it was popularized by some neo-reactionaries 10 years ago. But how is it that power works? Like first, one, become worthy, work on being worthy of having power. Then two, people will offer you power, and then three, you take it. That is, that goes back, long, long, long time. Like you can see that throughout human history.
Yeah, but regardless, if you maintain your integrity, your tradition, your manhood, your discipline, since the state is always hovering over your family, since it's always something that's there legally, she always has the option to say, you know what, I don't want to be with this man no more.
Well,
I'm
it
going to
comes to
divorce
free
him. I'm going to
will.
destroy
It,
my family.
it comes to free will. It all comes to free will. Like you can have all the laws for yourself, and so that you can. The women will never leave you, but she will not be gladly with you, and she will not. She will not sleep with you. She will not take care of the kids. It all comes to free will. Like if she feels to be with you, she wants to be with you. She will be with you. That comes to her education. How was she raised? How you were raised? Your family, her family. Do you have, I don't know, something to a support to draw upon in case she hits the fan? Sorry for my language, but yeah, it comes to all kinds of variables and factors. Like it is not as simple as just have the law and the law will solve everything. No, there is a social and economical factors side on side.
Yeah, when it comes to family law, like the fact is, family law is downstream from the culture. That's like for example, so like you can look at subcultures within the United States. Like you look at the Amish. How many Amish women are taking advantage or are making use of America's divorce laws in order to take the farm and the barn, etc., and kick their husband out? Like practically zero. So culture is power. Like, or what do you call it? Like the I think it was the fascist who described it as economia, but like how a culture or subculture expresses itself and actually acts in reality in real space. That is a very powerful force.
Well, yeah, but I think that's the problem. A lot of young men in the United States are opting out of marriage because they sense that as though they don't have any authority, and that the contract can be broken at any moment.
You're correct. No, that is true. That's the way they feel. And so my advice to young men in general is one, you got to be plugged into a community. Like you have to reject American individualism. Because that's just the reality. If you're going to strike out on your own, you're easy target. So like even part of me wonders, how much is it that the influence of the community that I'm a part of, influences my wife thinking and my wife's thought process 2 years ago? Probably did. I had aunts and uncle, great aunts and great uncle, who there was a 10-year period in their marriage where they hated each other, and they reconciled after 10 years, and in the end, they were together for 71 years. So it's so cultural, communal pressure definitely can keep people together and make them and force them to make the marriage work. But since that doesn't exist, today they probably would have divorced. Under that scenario. But that's the thing. Like since the general culture itself is completely individualistic, completely hedonistic, utterly degenerate, you have to be part of a subculture that actually has strength that can provide that, what do you call it, reinforcement.
Well. Take notice of how the degradation, the lessening of the extended family, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. In America, they only when they express families, it's only like the nuclear family, right? The children, the father, the two children, the mother. but there's little discussion of the rest of the family, which would have been the community. But I think that's just I think that that's pushed forward the lessening of the rest of the extended family in order to promote more government influence over the small family, let's say.
Correct, and it is a
On purpose.
consequence of free movement of labor. So if you look at if you any society that has free movement of labor, where you have free trade and free migration, internal or external, you can expect every generation about one third of the about 30% of the population to move to a place to like in the case of the United States. If you actually look at migration patterns of people moving for work, every generation 30% of people move to another state. So you take that out, that's what dissolved the extended families among the Anglo-Saxon Americans. When you have 3 out of every 10 people moving to a completely different state away from their entire extended family, that will lead to the entire dissolution of clans, dissolution of extended families, and all you're left with is the nuclear family. And now we're at the point where the nuclear family itself is being dissolved, because from a purely economic efficiency standpoint, where all you care about is maximizing GDP, if it's the best for your country's GDP for him to be working in Seattle and her to be working in robotics in Massachusetts, then it's best for the overall economy for them to divorce and maximize the GDP output of the entire country. So that's the end. We are literally at the end of what do you call it? The logical end of America's founding principles and founding assumptions.
Well, yeah, I would say that it just comes out that there's no individual. The individual doesn't exist in the sense that you receive your language from your mother received it from other people. You receive a set of cultural traits and characteristics that you get from your family. You get a certain way of speaking. You get some knowledge from your friends and your neighbors. Like in a sense, you would say that the individual doesn't exist because it just comes out of a context, out of a cultural, religious, of genetic context. So you would say, in that sense, what America's tried to do is to negate this reality that the basic unit of society is a family, and just abstract itself to the individual. But the individual have a duty to his family, a duty to his community, and that West America didn't saw what is going to happen right now. That you have this atomization that everything comes down to what the individual wants. I want my own desires, hedonism, and that leads to nothingness, to nihilism. And the man that said this is Seraphim Rose, like the American saint, as I like to call him. He literally called American individualism is going to lead to nihilism, which is basically just nothingness. That is what happens when you disintegrate a family. You get nothingness. It is like the atomic bomb. That is what happens when you take the family and you just blew it up. You have nothingness.
Yeah, I think I guess it'd be a little more clear in Russia to say rather that the tabula rasa, like the concept of the individual as tabula rasa, that concept does not exist. It's people come, everything as you mentioned, people come with a language from their parents, a culture that they inherited from their parents, their family, those around them. And so when you have a system, an economic system in this case, not just economic but a cultural system that dissolves extended families, that promotes rootless cosmopolitan style of life over being rooted to the soul, rooted to a piece of dirt, to a people, to a family, to a name. That kind of society is just essentially damned to be dissolved. And that's the fundamental thing. Like when I talk with people who talk about the 1965 Immigration Act destroying the United States, the thing that destroyed the United States is far earlier than that. With free migration, even internal free migration before doomed the United States in terms of doomed the United States to having dissolution of family. And once you have the dissolution of family, you get declining birth rates, and your country is screwed anyway, whether or not you bring in foreign immigration.
And it creates basically that you don't feel any need to be in this place. Like I don't have my family's not here. This is just my work. I can get a work in another place. So you do feel any need to be partake in that society. So it is like a really bad contract. You can get out and you get on. But if you are rooted in a country, this is my place. My parents are here. My grandparents are here. This is my land. This is where I belong. There is a a very different war be around it. So I'm gonna fight for this place. I'm gonna go for it. Like what is happening right now, as I was talking with Klaus about abortion here in Colombia. We're gonna fight for this because this is our land. Our people are here. My cousins, my grandparents, my parents. I have land here. I have animals here. I study here. I work here. So you have a commitment to your land.
I was going to point that out too.
What's going on in Colombia? Just briefly, what's going on in Colombia with the abortion? I saw something on the.
That
Late term abortion got legalized by the courts. It's always the courts. Yeah,
There you
we'll talk about it on some other stream. But yeah, I mean, even though the Colombia is more of or at least it was created as a political entity, not so much an ethnic one, because I mean, there's no such thing as a Colombian racially, I guess. There's no Colombian race. Like there's still a sense of being a Colombian, right? And you want to fight for your people. Like you have certain connections to Colombians, even if they're from other regions, right? I have connections with paisas, tolimenses, costeños, caleños. I want to see all of them prosper, and it's definitely I agree with that. But I also wanted to say this. I wanted to share this tweet that I sent out. So it said, "This is an unstoppable force meets immovable object moment. This isn't as black as white as people here making it out to be." And then I said, adding to this, whoever loses this conflict might just lose everything. If Putin loses, he is done. He will likely not recover from this. If Biden lets Russia take Ukraine wholesale, it's over for the U.S. Only a matter of time for Chinese Taiwan at that point. Putin's gamble is massive considering the stakes here. Huge risk and huge reward. Probably sniffed American weakness and went for the killing blow. The winning condition here is a total takeover of Ukraine. Donbass is a given and not likely a game changer. And then, did I answer to this?
shout out
Yeah.
to my man OG del Rancho. Shout out to him.
Yeah. So as I said, if I recall correctly, Putin hasn't lost an invasion/war, Chechnya, Russia, Georgia, Crimea. So his track record is strong. Depends on how much fight the West wants to put, but he has to take Ukraine wholesale. So yeah, it was explained in the stream that he took the rest of Ukraine because Ukraine refused to acknowledge the Donbass as a different, like a separate part of Ukraine. Like that's not Ukraine anymore, right? So that's why he declared war. But I don't know if he really had to do that. That still seems a bit extreme for me. And he has to completely overtake Ukraine. He can't just let a little bit free. Like no, that because then that's going to turn to his Afghanistan, and he can't afford that right now, especially. So this is a very high risk, high reward strategy. This is a winner take all situation. And I don't see a moderate conclusion to this situation. Again, either the U.S. is completely discredited, just like totally discredited. I'm talking like even Europe itself might create a new sphere of influence that may rival that of the U.S. out of this complete disaster. Or Putin is.
It's over the Ukraine.
No. What I mean is that, because the U.S. Gave its word to Ukraine that it was going to protect it, and then it didn't. So why would Europe ever trust the U.S. ever again? So now they would have to say, like, we're not going to trust the U.S. Anymore. Like, we're going to do our own thing now. We're going to set up our own little sphere of influence. And I mean, there's enough political will to do that. There's the Europeanists. There's Macron. He's been shilling for that for so long, and he's down to have a European sphere of influence. I mean, if you want to get deeper into that, just look at Richard Spencer's.
Base Macron.
Just look at Richard Spencer's tweets. He's all about that, European federalism. But if Russia loses, if Putin is not able to take Ukraine completely, he's done. I don't see any other scenario where he just doesn't come out of this unscathed, and Russia and Ukraine is not to like. If he had stopped at Donetsk and Luhansk, he would have gotten away with it. Again, that's my opinion. I don't think anyone would have batted an eye, because he would have made the case, oh, it's Russian territory, like they're ethnic Russians, like whatever, right? But he wants to go to Kiev, And Kiev, and as Jose Miguel said, they're very, very Russophobic in Western Ukraine. I mean, they're neo Nazis. They're Ukrainian. They're anti-Russian to the bones. You know, they still
Yeah,
remember the Holodomor.
it's not gonna happen.
What's
It's
not
not,
gonna happen?
Russia taking over the entire Ukraine. It's not.
I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not saying. I'm not saying he will. I'm not saying he won't. I'm saying he has to. Otherwise, he's screwed. Like that's his winning condition. So whatever he
You
wants to
see,
do.
I don't
I'd
think
say,
I don't
yeah,
think there are any winners here.
well, there's win
Well,
conditions. Like I'd say the Russian win condition is
the treaty, the
the
treaty,
treaty, demilitarization of Ukraine,
and divided
the
Ukraine.
a divided Ukraine, and
What, a buffer
pseudo-annexation of the Russian parts of
zone? That would be the
Yeah, yeah, they're going to take their piece. They're going to negotiate with the West, and everybody's going to move on. No, nobody's going to risk nuclear war over the Ukraine.
One thing I find
Wait, so-
interesting. Oh, what?
So you guys think the going to Kiev was kind of like a bargaining play? It's like, okay, I'll step off of Kiev, but give me the Donbass and we'll be cool.
It's a little flex. It's a little flex, but it's
Yeah,
like
Kiev is a Russian city.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kiev is also still very Russian because Kiev is it's on the middle. It's right
in the
it's
Dnieper.
on the river.
On the
Yeah.
river. Yeah.
So yeah, it's if he goes all the way to Odessa, that'd be a whole different.
Kiev is where Russia started.
Yeah,
You're gonna
Um,
see basically America selling guns to all of the Baltics and to Eastern Europe. You're gonna see the divided up of Ukraine, like what happened with Mexico, a treaty for disarmament, and to take the Nazis out. That is going to happen.
Man, this is so crazy, right?
I think it's interesting what you said about delegitimizing United States in Europe, man, because NATO pretty much is an organization headed by United States, and if United States doesn't defend Ukraine, then what does that say about the whole?
well, yeah, that's exactly why I was inquiring.
well.
This is exactly why I was inquiring about the situation between the United States and the Ukraine, because there seems to be a lot of this seems to be pulling a lot of ways in the when it comes to NATO, the Europeans, and the American structure, right? With Biden being the figure.
Yeah, like if the United States doesn't, okay, because technically, like a country like Germany is supposed to say, okay, we'll defend Germany, and then Germany will defend us. I mean, we all know that's not an equal relationship, but if the United States doesn't defend Europe, then the whole idea of us having bases out in Europe kind of like falls apart, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like imagine a friend of yours asks for a loan, right? And he says, "Oh, bro, I'll definitely give it back to you, right? No problem, blah blah." And he says that to a lot of people, so it's $100 each. Now he has like let's say $1,000, right? And he doesn't pay any of these loans back. All of you guys are gonna tell the rest of your friends, as many as you can, like, "Yo, this guy will not pay back his loans, so don't loan him any money." And that dude is kind of screwed at that point. It's kind of like it's kind of like how the U.S. is operating right now. It's like you gave your promise to Ukraine that you would support them if they took out their nukes, if they denuclearized. Now, again, was that a good idea? Was that a bad idea? I'm not going to argue that. But what I'm arguing is that you did make a promise. And if you're not going to uphold that promise, then your word is as good as useless. Why should we ever trust you, United States government, in anything you say? You couldn't even get that. And there's many promises the U.S. has broken in the post-war era, and I'm sure this happens also with China and Russia. Like, they probably do that too. But the U.S. is supposed to be the special case. It's supposed to be the example, the shining city on the hill. You know what I'm saying? So them breaking that promise makes a lot. It has a lot of repercussions. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying this is what's going to happen.
It has repercussions, but at the same time, they're gonna function. They're gonna negotiate, and they're gonna work together regardless. They're not gonna completely revert everything or completely make grand changes of how NATO functions, because Russia split a little part of the Ukraine. That's not going to happen.
I think they're gonna take the whole country, bro.
They don't have enough manpower to occupy it.
Yo, the draft is going to happen, Chesty. So that get ready, man.
I mean, I don't.
We're going to get blown out, man.
I don't think we're gonna get involved. I mean, do you guys think we're gonna get involved? I don't think we're gonna get involved.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. But they might supply some weapons and stuff like that.
The funny thing is, they're not even giving the weapons. The United States offered loans to Ukraine, so the U.S. won't even actually give them help. They're just offering to loan them money so they can buy weapons from the United States. And then, of course, the Ukrainian people get shafted, having to pay crazy high taxes. People who are already dirt poor to pay interest to U.S. bankers. That's how the
Bro.
United States treats its allies. That's what the whole world needs to see.
Yeah, you can see this as the basically falling apart of the system after the fall of the Iron Curtain after 1991. So it's gonna be some multipolarity. You're gonna see more or less like the rise of regional powers. If Mexico gets itself, it could be around it. Brazil, China, you're gonna see more of it. Russia. Well, Russia took the handle with Kazakhstan, and Russia is the de facto leader on Central Asia. So yeah, you would say that this is the falling apart of the international system, and Europe might get whooped in the middle of it because they cannot handle Islamic terrorism. They have very declining birth rates. They don't have really great military apart from France with the French Foreign Legion and the Spaniards. But the Spaniards they cocked to the Moroccans, so there's that. Um,
I don't know, Lucha, because here's the thing. I think if the U.S. if U.S. imperialism collapses, if the U.S. is no longer able to be the
when not
if
if
slash
when.
when okay, what I'm saying is that I think Europe is gonna wake up from that, and because again, you have all the pieces that are necessary to create a European sphere of influence. And they've been trying to. The whole European Union thing, Macron, he's super in favor of this European kind of imperialism, this moral imperialism of, oh, we're even better than the Americans. We actually
Yeah,
stand up for...
I can even counterpoint to that.
I concur with what Claude was saying.
Fucking Macron.
I don't
Oh
think
my
it's
God.
gonna entirely decline. I think Biden wants to focus on isolationism, and he's well aware that what we saw in Afghanistan a few months ago and what we can find ourselves in the United States is problematic for him. So,
I mean, I think it would benefit the United States in the long term if it becomes less intervention ultimately, and it focuses on its own problems, right? More
well,
on
what
the
would Trump
infrastructure.
do? I mean,
Pardon me?
to be honest with you, I don't even think Trump would have been capable of pulling out of Afghanistan. I think there would have been troops there to this day. Let's be honest. I mean, that's just my opinion.
He did try a couple times to pull them out, and the State Department and every other department underneath him refused to budge on that one.
He would have carpet bombed the whole damn city before pulling the troops out.
Let's see. I mean, yeah. Anyway, what I want to talk about before was when people talk about rising European imperialism, the EU will collapse. Like EU is collapsing, and it will collapse. You won't see a united Europe, but you will see a France that can throw its weight around after they solve their own internal issues with the whole. The fact is, though the Yellow Vest protests went away during the initial COVID scare, that's going to come back with a storm, especially since people are not going to have heats in the winter. That and also unemployment from the lack of power to run industry. That's going to be a huge hot potato on Macron's hands. So Macron's going to get screwed. I think France is going to be doing just fine 10, 20 years from now. But
yeah, we got to brace for Islamo-fascist French regional imperialism.
I don't know about that one, but yeah, I would say that the European Union is gonna fall apart, and you're gonna see the rise of France as a regional power and its sphere of influence, and you're gonna see it competing with Germany once again. And you would see that the UK is gonna fall into a place that is going to try to make more friends with Canada, Australia, New Zealand, So yeah, you're gonna see basically Europe being divided up again and again by France and Germany, in their sphere of influence. The other thing that could happen is that Poland gets it together and it creates a sphere of influence in Eastern Europe. That will happen too. I don't know how it will happen, but that is a possibility. But you're gonna see basically the EU falling apart and waking up that they need to recruit. They need to stop being so sodomite, because that is the word. They need to be so sodomite and take care of its own people and fight Islam.
You know, they still have bases in Germany, right? Like, also, like, sorry to, sorry to like, cope, but
Testizo, we can't hear you very well.
can you hear me now? Yo,
Yes, yes,
yeah, dude. Okay, can you hear me now?
yes, much better.
I'm saying, we still have bases out there. So all this thinking of like, oh, you know, France is gonna rise up and be imperial, and Germany is gonna like become German, and you know, we still the bases are there specifically so that another Hitler doesn't come up out of nowhere and Putin doesn't take the continent, or we have another Napoleon.
Yeah. It's. I think they're being hypothetical.
Once the empire collapses, what are they going to do? What are they going? They're not going to be there. They're going to get called back.
This will not collapse.
The EU is collapsing right now. Like
No,
shoot,
the United States.
Oh, the U.S. is going to collapse. Like, there's no way they're going to make it even to 2040.
I really doubt that. I mean,
No, I don't think the U.S. will collapse. It's going to
I think
decline in influence globally. I don't think it's going to
track a little
collapse.
bit, but
The only way to
pull
prevent
our
a
bases out
collapse of the
Germany.
federal government is if the U.S. government were to actually retreat from the rest of the world in order to focus on holding the center. And the United States leadership, the actual oligarchs who rule the United States, have demonstrated that they will not do that. The last person who wanted to do something like that was Trump, and they literally, knocked out, him in 2020. And given, Biden, et cetera, everything he's doing, they want to try to maintain their hegemon over the whole world. Because of that, yeah, they're facing an actual collapse. They're not going to, it's going to be more like the Western Roman Empire, not a, what do you call it? So, like when, if you look at the Eastern Roman Empire, you had this retreat in order to focus on strengthening the center, and then you had a re-expansion that happened under Saint Justinian. Like if the U.S. leadership would actually, like oligarchic ruling class, wanted to do that, they could do that, but they're not doing that. They're going to go full Western Europe. We're not going to retreat. We're going to try to hold on as much power as we can. They're going to overextend themselves. They're already overextended.
No. I hope that you're right. I hope that you're right. I hope that the Fed does come to its senses and pulls and reduces its influence on Europe.
I see a lot of pro-isolationism, but I don't see anyone talking or calling for the emptying out of bases in Germany or Japan. I just don't see it.
No, the U.S. won't do it, not voluntarily. I mean, it'd kind of be hilarious. There's actually, what's his name? John Ringo. He wrote a book called The Last Centurion, which is actually set in that kind of scenario. In this case, it was a troop station near Iran, where the U.S. de facto was in a collapse. And the question is, okay, a bunch of troops are cut off in a foreign nation, in a military base, and how do they survive? How do they get back home, etc. And interestingly enough, I mean, he was a guy who writes from military experience. But I find it interesting because it's his proposed way of how U.S. Army based overseas would do it. It's plausible.
I mean, we could definitely pull out, but I just don't see I don't see anyone debating about it. I don't see anyone calling for it. I don't see anyone wanting to. Like, definitely pull out of the global conflict.
A lot of things can happen. I don't think we're certain of what's going to happen. A lot of things can happen in 50
nor
years.
do I see like the ambition of Europe to want to get rid of these bases. Europeans, they're occupied by the United States, but they seem to not know that.
No, they know it. I've been to Europe. They know it.
I mean, maybe the elite, but I've never met any European ever tell me that, oh, our nations are occupied by you guys.
I've been to the Czech and Poland, and I've had.
It's like, oh no, they're our friends,
Like I've had people I've had people say that to me to my face. I mean, I got friends in the Czech Republic and Poland, etc. Like they know this.
Bro, like they get their gay parades. They are in English. Why would you, as a German person, do a gay parade in English? They would do it on German, on Czech, on Polish. They speak on their public relationships on English. Why? Why? Because they're a colony and they know it.
But I don't think
Probably,
they
but
even
I
care
don't
at
think
this
they
point.
know it.
Like,
I don't think.
very
Yeah, they
few
know it,
Europe.
but they don't care. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think even Mexicans know it.
I mean, bro, like
What,
Sweden's and
Brad?
like young Swedes in Sweden. I'm not even talking about immigrants. Like ethnic Swedes in Sweden, like the Zoomer generation, they speak to each other in English. Not and they know Swedish. They can speak Swedish fine, but they feel more comfortable communicating with themselves in English. So that's the level that they're
Well,
at. Like they don't.
English
Yeah.
is the default global language at this point.
Yeah, see, business lingua franca. I mean, like if I was to study abroad at a any European university, I would find myself speaking English to other students there, despite whatever country they're from.
Actually, low key, we're even doing that as well. If I'm, yeah, we're all Hispanic over here, and we're speaking in English. So, like, you know
No,
what I'm
pero
saying? Like,
papi, pero todo el mundo aquí habla
There you
español.
go.
no sé, buen punto.
I mean,
sea,
Oh man.
probably reactionaries and whatever.
Because
They probably know they're occupied, but not us.
that is what happens with Chicanos and when Mexicans may migrate to the U.S. The
Mhm.
second generation or third generation, they don't speak Spanish or have a very broken Spanish. So there's that too.
There's
Yeah,
also, I
it's
mean, even
normal.
with
We live in the U.S.
we got two Colombians on this
Chicanos.
panel, and I'm a heritage Colombian, and my own parents didn't speak to me in Spanish intentionally. So you'll even find that with others. But yeah, that is definitely a thing.
It depends on the family.
Mhm.
I don't think it has anything to do with second or third generations. It depends on how you're raised, and if you're raised within a Hispanic community that emphasizes the communication of the Spanish language and of the culture.
But even with that, there is one weak point because my wife, Puerto Rican, grew up. She has over 70 cousins, so she grew up speaking Spanish and with and at least although her immediate family was broken, there's a lot very intact extended family, she what do you call it? The thing that she was weak on is reading. Reading is something that isn't really, at least within the Spanish speaking communities that I've seen, in Texas, in New York, and in Pennsylvania, there isn't much, much emphasis put on reading, and that is a problem.
Yeah.
You're right. You're 100% right. I mean, I need to read more. You're right.
Well, I would say I read all day every day because I am I am in law school and I try to read about philosophy. So I don't know the case of immigrants because we are in in different situations. I am in a Spanish speaking context. My family is here. I talk with everyone in Spanish on a daily basis, so I cannot relate to that.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's very true because, like, I mean, if you're in Colombia, if you're born and raised that dude, then yeah, everything's going to be in Spanish. I'm forcing myself to read books in Spanish because I have to, I want to pass this down to my kids, and so I got to do it myself. And yeah, I wish it's just stuff that I wish I was taught as a kid. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
it's funny because I once talked to a ESL, an English language, what is it, teacher, learner, whatever it was, educator on teaching immigrant students English, and she said one of the problems that shocked her that Asian immigrants didn't have a problem, but Hispanic Americans, one born here, they were put in ESL because they couldn't speak either English or Spanish. They spoke like a broken Spanglish. And one of the patterns she noticed is that the parents would only talk to them in kitchen Spanish, but would never provide with them literature or writing to expand on that Spanish. So what they learn is this colloquial Spanglish, and in school, it's like we don't have no choice but to put this guy in a ESL class because he doesn't speak neither English or Spanish.
yeah, and that's the importance of you want to make sure you pass down both. So even here, like my own family, like my kid, his mother speaks to him in Spanish all the time. When he's just with me, we speak English, and when it's all three of us together, we're trying to make sure we're doing mostly Spanish. But it is like we got books in Spanish. Building a Spanish book collection for him, as well as an English book collection. Because there's no reason that a small kid can't learn both or even more. Like we're actually going to have him learning Russian as well because we have an opportunity for him to learn that. So your typical person, it used to be like your typical person in Europe would speak 5 languages. Like if you start young, you can do it.
Yeah. There's something really interesting that I see about what you just posted, Klaus. That there are left-wing progressive people here in Colombia supporting Russia, and then you have
Yes.
like it is so funny. Like they are really gay, they are really pro-trans and pro-abortion. They support Russia. It's like, bro, what happens? And then you have like right-wing people that support Ukraine. Like, oh, you gotta respect the borders, you gotta respect the international system. It is like so confusing down here. I don't know if it is the same right there up there.
Marica, es que yo vi mucho a Mamerto en Twitter y es que
Y que hay que
apoyando a
apoyar a
Rusia.
Rusia. Sí.
Marica. No, es que me da una
Da
risa.
mucha
Yo,
risa, que da mucha
bro,
risa.
bro,
Yeah,
Colombian Twitter is something else, bro.
it's
Like,
on another level. Commentary is on another level. And some people, some Catholic were like, oh, yeah, this was predicted. Rah, rah, rah. Some people, the conspiracy theories, like, oh, yeah, Putin is the great Satan.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, people think that Putin is like a part of the USSR. Like, there has been like 30 years apart.
I got an idea proposal for Billy Escobar. He should do a little like compilation of videos of Putin during this whole thing of CNN clips, and he should do the face app thing and put his face on the Putin in all those moments in like a 3-minute clip of Putin being based as he marches the troops to Kiev, fighting for the will of the people.
I find it interesting because, what do you call it? Like the right wing Russians I know, they see Putin as a moderate, which I find to be interesting. And left wing Russians I know also see him as, it's funny that they see him as too right wing and the right wingers see him as too left wing. The guy is apparently kind of center, at least as far as Russian politics go. At least that's my impression from the left wing and right wing Russians that I've talked to in my personal life. Granted, I only have a snapshot of like a few dozen Russians who live in Texas. So
Do you know what
Crazy,
no
crazy.
one is talking about? Bitcoin went off. And what is going to happen now with Bukele, bro? Bukele is going to lose El Salvador with Bitcoin going down.
bro, he's gonna go back to the
Well,
he's
he
gonna go back to
leveraged.
working at the McDonald's,
He
bro.
leveraged 20 today. He leveraged 20, so he's still doing good. The problem is that I've noticed Bukele tweets a lot about his like WhatsApp and his messages. It's like national security concern. But besides that, I think Salvador is doing well in terms of like their ROI.
Yeah, and you could say that in a sense that the markets are really flowing. Yeah,
McDonald's manager Bukele.
what did he do exactly?
Vicepresidente de la República de McDonald's.
El
You know what?
vicepresidente de la
Why you gotta do
In
this
other
to El
words,
Salvador,
in
man?
other
Come
words,
on.
Bukele, they messed it up because you might be next. Biden is monitoring the situation closely, so don't don't
But
fuck it
Biden
up.
is sleeping the situation closely.
Sleeping.
Sleeping the
Bro.
situation.
No, I got to make sure my banana republics out of monitoring out of DC are doing well.
Yeah,
Whether
he's
it's
sleeping the
Bogotá,
situation.
Santo Domingo, DF, even San Salvador. Got to keep you guys in check.
Oh man, it's so funny. So yeah, it is really interesting. Like every country has its own way to react to the Ukraine and Russia situation. But what I find really interesting, I made some tweets about this. Is like I found it really, 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 I don't know how apátrida, like to be really related to our foreigners. Like we're in Colombia, We have guerrillas. We have internal warfare. People are like, "Oh, let's pray for Ukraine, bro. Let's pray for Colombia. We
Yeah.
need to end the guerrilla zone here." People are just looking out on what Americans do, what Americans are saying. Like, bro, focus on your people first. You have trouble on here first. Abortion just got outlawed. Like,
It's very true. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the whole
that's
like.
fucking tragic, man.
Yeah.
Damn.
Just look at the
That's
Second
sad.
Amendment. It says, "Love your neighbor as yourself," like the neighbor, the person who's next to you. Like, stop focusing on the whole. Let's focus on people 6,000 miles away. That's all virtue signaling. You know,
yeah, people just do it for the fame. Like, oh yeah, let's pray for Ukraine, bro. Let's help the people that are here in Colombia starving. Like,
It's
people
like-
are getting killed by the guerrillas.
I have one, parish member and friend who's was visiting Ukraine. They're in Kiev and they're trying to get back to Texas. So, like, I'm praying for that one person because I know them and they are a neighbor actually. So, it's like, I don't know. People.
I know someone.
Base
Barbara.
Putin. He's the real leader of the Hispanic people. He's the real one.
I know
Hey,
guys
don't be
from,
here. Come on,
out
man.
here that
Come on,
fighting
man.
for Ukraine. Yo,
Yo, can y'all hear me?
Yo, what happened?
Yo.
Yo, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, yo. Hey, I was just saying, bro. Hey, yo. Listen, man. If USA drafts me, I'm going to Mexico. Fuck that. I'm like 30 minutes away. But I'll say this, though. If I see Russians in Texas, I'll fucking blast their ass, bro. I'll shoot all the motherfuckers. I'll say, hey, but if Biden tells me, go to Europe, I ain't fucking going. Fuck that shit. You know what I'm saying? But I'll defend Texas though. I'll do that.
Yo,
If I see them in Texas, I'll defend them.
You think it'd be
I'll
worth
defend
it
us.
to go to like let's say mutually assured destruction? You think it'd be worth it to go to Ukraine just to enjoy the services of the
Of
You
the
think it's worth
females.
Yep. You think it's worth it?
Nah, man, bro. Nah. Hey, we got some baddies out here in America. We good.
Hey, but if the world's gonna end, you might as well get what
Bro,
you can,
Chichi,
right?
there ain't no Russians coming to Texas, bro. You're fine.
Unfortunately,
Yeah. But I was just saying, no, just in case.
Texas will continue to be occupied
He was just
by the
throwing it
Gringo.
out there like, yo, Putin, don't be out here like that.
Hey, yo, I
Texas
let
is
people
gonna blow
know.
them out of the sky.
Hey, I
The
let
whole-
people know. Don't come
The whole
out here to Texas.
It's gonna be Texas.
Yo,
Standing on top of everything.
everybody's strapped out here in Texas. Putin already knows not to fuck with Texas, man.
Are you aware that the Russian government actually has given funding to the Texan National Party?
Ah, man,
The
fuck them
actual
niggas,
Texas
bro.
Secessionist Party. Like,
So
that is
I'm-
actually a thing.
I don't even know, bro. It's just I'm not really political. I don't really care about this shit. I would sit back, listen to y'all.
He just wants the Russian baddies in Texas. Then that's it.
He just wants to fight. I can respect that.
No, but yeah, I don't see. I don't see you. Well, there will be like as an exodus from Ukraine, like what happened with Syria, and it's all what happened with Venezuela, and what happened with Romania. There are a ton of Romanians all over Europe. I can see that going. That there will be like changing demographics down there.
You know, there's a boxer from the Ukraine, Lomachenko. So he left. He's a young guy, 30. So he's good for the draft. I'm sure they wanted him to fight, but he left. And everybody's calling him a ducker, a war dodger, shit like that. But I respect him though, because me, again, I respect anybody that puts themselves first, and I
You know
respect
what?
selfish people. I respect selfish people because I'm selfish myself. I like America. It's a good country. It was done a lot for me. Great opportunity, but I wouldn't fight for it because I'm
You
just
know, Billy-
selfish.
You know, Billy Cornpuffs is
You're
pro-Russian, right?
American.
Pro-Putin. Would you
Yo,
Would you go fight for the?
no, let's not do this beef
Would
shit.
you fight for the United States for President Biden if he was on the front lines fighting with the great Chechens?
Oh, you already know it. You already know it.
Bro, yeah, hey, no, no,
Don't gonna
no,
ask
let's
me
not.
twice.
Hey, guys, you're on my channel. Okay, you gotta
Yeah, yeah.
respect. Hey,
You know,
Hey, no,
there's
hey, I'm just
honestly,
playing,
yo, and
bro.
honestly, Loki, I shouldn't even be having y'all over here because y'all was talking shit about me, saying that I was leaking shit on the Discord and shit like that. I don't know.
It is what it. It's old news, bro. It is
All
what it
right,
is, bro.
all right.
Well,
That was
I
just
would
some
say
bitch
that
shit. Sorry.
it comes down to what we talk about automation, what happened before. Like, if you don't relate to the country, you don't have family members, you don't have your extended family, you don't have land, you don't own animals, you don't have a common history, why would you defend it? Like, I hate that Colombia legalized euthanasia, abortion, but my grandmother is here. If a really bad the guerrillas get to power, I'm gonna defend my grandmother. But as an American, that you don't know your second cousin, your grandmother is on another state, why would you defend it? There is no tie. There's no organic type of family that is going there.
Very true. I was just thinking how, like in Colombia, like the families that are there are all still concentrated in Chia, and here in the United States, all of us who are children of those that came here, we're all scattered everywhere between California, Florida, and New York.
Yo, Jose Miguel, are you cousin with Josue Hernandez?
Sí, Josue Manuel. Yep.
Yeah, he goes to my parish.
Yeah, yeah, I knew so. I was going to bring that up because I wanted to talk to you about that because I was like, yeah. Anyway, he mentioned Lucho, and I was like, oh, wait a second.
You know, he wants me to marry his sister.
Yeah, I figured so. I'm actually screening some candidates for her right now. An Orthodox doctor who's actually interested.
Yeah,
So-
you niggas want me to be part of your family.
Oh yeah, dude, you should totally let him marry. No, the crazy thing is, Josue and I are both named after the same grandfather. We're both named after our mutual grandfather, and because I was born first, and he was, and but he's the firstborn of the firstborn. So when I was born, my mom wanted to name me after her dad, and of course, my uncle was like, Josue's dad is like, hey, I'm the firstborn son. I get to name my son after dad. So they had a huge disagreement, and so our dad's name was Manuel Jose, and so I was supposed to be Jose Manuel, but then because there was a mutual agreement between sister and brother, and so I became Jose Miguel, and he became Josue Manuel. So that's how our names happened.
Yeah. I was talking to him like the other Sunday. He told me, "Hey, you need to go to Chia. You need to meet my sister. You may like them." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I leave it to God's will." But no, knocking the door is not entering. So
So, L Dog, what's your perspective on the whole situation geopolitically between
Yeah.
Russia, the
What's the
West,
white man
Ukraine?
perspective?
We need the white man's opinion.
Hey man, it's the Jews, man.
We need the Slavic man's opinion.
always the Jews, bro. Always
That's
the
who it is,
Jews.
bro. Like
But
I haven't actually researched anything, but just just my gut feeling is telling me that it's the Jews, man.
but on what
Oh yeah.
side? Because in Ukraine, I mean, the president is
Come
Jewish, but
come on, Klaus, stop acting stupid. They control every side.
so what is this? So a lot of goyim died. Is that what you're trying to say? Is that just
Yup.
is
No,
this
no, no more Aryan brother wars.
actually actually Richard Spencer was just talking about that. He's like, because he's very pro EU type of thing, right? And he's like,
Of course he is.
he's super anti-Trump, but he was also super anti-Putin, and at least on that I can like respect his consistency, because he's like, Putin is destroying the concept of this European
White
thing.
Popo. He's destroying White Popo.
No more brother wars.
yeah, no more brother wars.
But on a serious note, like one thing that I find funny is people have this Disney conception of the world where they're like, "Oh no, Russia attacked. They must be the bad guy or whatever." And it's like, listen, no one cares about the non-aggression principle in real life. Like that shit gets violated, Wars, they just happen as a part of reality. That's the thing. It's for power, like, and it's for your people. The Russians, they have something to gain from actually getting Ukraine. So, hey, yeah, Spencer. I mean, he says no more brother wars, and I agree, right? But it's like you know, this kind of has to be done because the last thing I want is for NATO and America to spread throughout Europe even more.
Exactly. I mean, the fact is, Richard Spencer. I mean, besides the fact that he glows like crazy, he's going to advocate for whatever's good for the American empire, or whatever's good for his handlers for the American empire. The guy's such a man. I don't understand why people follow him personally.
I mean, I like Richard. I like a lot of what he has to say. I'll say with this one though, it's just because he's American that he's saying this, right? Like he kind of views America as a white country, I guess. I
What?
mean,
No,
I
no,
think that
no.
Not necessarily.
No, Eldar, I don't know when's the last time you followed Richard, but nowadays he's very much into this pro EU thing. Like his favorite political like figure nowadays is Emmanuel Macron. He's moved on from this Trumpian stuff, like whatever. He's now very pro European Union. That's why he doesn't like what's going on in Ukraine right now. It's because he sees Russia as a threat to European federalism and stuff like that.
right.
So
Now,
Let's be real.
I actually share his opinion there that I'm pro the EU. I like Macron, but what I wanted to happen was I know this was unrealistic, but my ideal scenario would have been German, like I would say EU nations occupy Ukraine under the pretext of defending them, and as soon as the Russians rolled in, they would have turned their backs on Ukraine, handed it over to Russia, and then integrated Russia, which now includes Ukraine and Belarus, into the EU and completely separated themselves from America.
It's like pretty much what Richard Spencer would argue.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to happen,
yeah.
but now I'm sympathetic towards the Russians because it's like, well, they are kind of fighting the American expansion because it is like Ukraine is not a part of the EU. And I think Russia should get priority to be a part of the EU over Ukraine.
I mean, but like, let's say hypothetically, the Ukraine was a part of the EU. Would it really have any resources, power, or anything to contribute to what?
It does have a
what
large
to say?
supply of labor. Like there's about 45 million people there. There's good terrain for farming. Like if you invested in there, you'd probably have like a big amount of growth. But right now, it just has nothing. But Russia, Russia obviously has its military. It has
Oil,
a large
gas, nat
amount of
gas.
resources.
That's
So
actually the Eldog, what you mentioned there about the population of Ukraine as the resource. That is actually Putin's long term goals. When I was reading a speech of his about that, like the speech where he talks about the Belarus, Ukrainians, and Russians being the same people, he actually are being brothers in arms, descended from the same ancestors. Now that still the distinctions are real, but the unity is also was supposed to be the norm. Like he actually discusses how if it wasn't for the Bolshevik Revolution, the population of the USSR or Russia right now would be 500 million. And and that's assuming just the same population birth rate declines that happened with the rest of the West. If Russia had followed that same pattern, you'd have a population of 500 million within Russia. So he even referred to that in that
I
speech.
can see that a lot of young, healthy men and women in Ukraine were killed who, after the war, I mean, would have had because after the war there was the baby boom, right? There would have been a lot of children born that just weren't. So it's like, that's actually one of the biggest problems with Russia is its declining demographics, and it's like it's pretty hard to just reverse declining demographics with like an aging demographic with economic incentives, right? It doesn't seem to work too well.
Correct. It's fundamentally like that. That's why we talked
Yeah,
about
that's
that
like
earlier.
the other example would be Hungary, right? With Viktor Orban and
Yeah, like some people, they like I noticed like Tucker Carlson Republicans are like, oh, this is what we need, and it's like, dude, it's not actually working that well from what I've heard. And
Correct.
when the Nazis tried to do it, it didn't even work quite well. So it's like, yeah, I understand having something in place like that, but honestly, to me, it seems like more of what I call a spiritual problem or a cultural problem. Is people who no longer have a will to live or are just not happy with their lives. Subconsciously, in my opinion, they don't want to pass on children.
You're correct. We talked about this earlier in the stream, but the nation of Georgia, how their birth rates have completely reversed. They went from they were below 1.0, now they're above replacement, and it was wholly through the work of the Georgian Orthodox Church and their patriarch, Patriarch Illyria. And all of it was just religion based. And not only that, with a government that was hostile to the church and to the patriarch. Like they actually tried to get him removed multiple times. So that's like fundamentally, it is a religious. It is the only solution long term is religion to get the birth rates up. When you're trying to, the thing with kids are a sacrifice, like their work. Like I enjoy my son, but he is work. People are if you're using material incentives to get people to have babies, it's not going to work in the long run because they once they experience how much work it is just to raise that one or two kids, they're going to stop. No amount of financial incentives is going to change that. Whereas, if you have people who come in with a religious attitude of, this is, an act of love, an act of sacrifice. It's not about me. It's about, the faith, the future, the church, what have you. That does reverse birth rates around.
Well, yeah, you have to have
Right.
a metaphysical understanding of things. You cannot just go about the material stuff. You need to see yourself, because if you only go the material, you'll say, "Oh, but I could have this money for me. I could be partying,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
drinking," and that is the problem that you have with that mentality. You need to see, well, I will not have this, but this will be for my grandchildren and their own grandchildren, and they're gonna be part of the church of my own parish, of my own town where I have been. They are gonna take part of my property, and I'm gonna lead my name forward. You need to have a metaphysical understanding of it. If you just looking for the material stuff, you're gonna go full blown individualist, and it's gonna go not make either sense to have kids. Like that is the point of abortion, to not have kids because you want to enjoy yourself. So
Well, I wouldn't argue that, man. I would actually argue that abortion is an effective eugenics program.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That, like, I would say, like, that's how you pass it to the common folk, right? You tell them that, hey, it's about a woman's choice, like, she should determine. Uh,
Well, eugenics is the ultimate expression of a woman not taking, being completely rejecting responsibility of anything.
Yo, guys, hold up. I just wanted to make this stupid joke about Lord of War, and did they predict the Ukraine situation?
Ukraine. I was young, but I remember. Look, I started in Odessa, right? And then I worked my way to the Crimean.
You're gonna be dead before you fucking reach Kiev. Come on, we're going home. Come on.
You fuck!
I don't know if that's gonna be the Ukrainian forces or the Western forces or the Russian forces, but somebody's gonna be fucking dead before they reach Kiev. So yeah, it's just.
Yeah, someone is gonna be on here in Colombia snoring some coke and be like, "I was born in Ukraine. I remember when the Russians invaded."
Oh shit! Oh shit!
Oh man, but yeah. Going straight to the point, you don't need to have all the material understanding. It's like if I talk to my grandparent today, he will be like, I did it because it was the right thing to do. I wanted my kids to go to the parish, to have a good education, to have the land, to work with me. So yeah, you have to get a transcendental, I would say, understanding of reality.
Right, because what I was gonna say is, you try and fund like these social programs to get people to have children. It's never gonna be as good as not having children in terms of accumulating wealth, because like children are fucking expensive, and they take time, like all that stuff. There's no way you could give people enough money to offset all of that. But that's what Ukraine has. It has like a large population that, you know, can be the future workers, I guess.
Well, I would say that poverty is not in itself as of a problem right now, because you see, right now we're on the best of times to have kids. Good medicine. You have internet for education. You could teach your kids. Best of times of living of all of human history. Less violence of as of all of human history. I would say that you have more security. You have more information available. The things that people don't want to have kids. You have maybe the best of conditions, because my grandparents, they lived in very harsh conditions, and they managed to have 7 kids when my grandma was 23. I'm 20. I am not even married. Like, you understand the situation. People were poor in the past, and they had more children because they had this understanding of reality. The children may be expensive, but people were up to it.
Dude, I swear the universe is fucking with me, but I must have heard this like 6 times over the last year or something. Just like a female I know, and it's always a white female saying like, having kids, like, you know, I've got a dog and that's enough work, and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I want to
You know,
wait till I'm fucking 35 to have kids. Like when
Yeah,
the
and it comes out
biological
like
clock
half
is.
retarded and fucking
You
ugly as
know,
hell. Like,
I am in favor of taking some people's right to speech. You know, white women, they are part of that demographic that I want to take them right to speech out of the way.
I am
Yo,
as
yo, yo,
well.
yo,
We need
yo,
to take all their rights away. Period.
yo.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that, can I please play this video? I know some of y'all have seen
Play
this
it.
video,
Go,
but you
go,
have to
go
watch
for
this
it.
video. Hold on, hold on. We have to watch this video.
Ah, I've seen
Yes,
this shit.
yes, we have to.
I'm looking forward
Hold
to
on, hold
this.
on. Let me play. Everybody.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not your mother. If I was your mother, you would have been so loved, held in the arms of joyous light. Never would the stories plight the world unfurled before our eyes, a pure demise of nations sitting peaceful under a night sky. If I was your mother, the world would have been warm. So much laughter and joy, and nothing would harm. I can't imagine the stain, the soul-stealing pain that the little boy you must have seen and believed, and the formulation of thought quickly taught that you lived in a cruel, unjust world. Is this why you now decide no one will get the best of you? Is this why you do not hide nor away shy from taking back the world? Was it because so early in life, all that strife racked your little body with fear? If I was mother, if the world was cold, I'd have died to make you warm. I'd have died to protect you from the unjust, the violence, the terror, the uncertainty. I would have died to give you life. Oh, dear Mr. President Putin, if only I'd been your mother. Perhaps the torture of unwrit youth would not within your heart imbue ascription to such fealty against that world that you thought was so cruel. Perhaps you would hold dear human life, and on this night, instead of Mother Russia, you would call me, and I would set your mind quite free with the love that only a mother can give, and only a mother can take away. When holds she doesn't the harm at bay and leaves her boy for the promise of a man. Whatever your story, Mr. President Putin, I can't imagine how it feels in your heart, but I know if I was your mother, I would be a start towards the awareness of what a powerful being of light you could be if your mind was only free from the violence you've seen when you were just 2 or 3. I cannot believe I was born too late, in a different place, when I would have loved you so, watched you play wherever you go.
Man, I hate white women.
Dude, like watching that shit, it's just like, okay. First of all, it's funny that she has like a fucking Buddha statue in the background or whatever. I don't know what to call it, so excuse my ignorance. every fucking East Asian statue is a Buddhist statue in my eyes. They all look the same, whatever.
And they are full toxic, bro.
But
She's so passive aggressive. Like she wants to control. She wants to take a grip of it. Like women, take care of your own business. Like what are you talking about? You look like crazy. Get that hair done. And you are a Buddhist. You're basically worshiping Satan. What is wrong with you? Shut up
well,
and go make
it's not
dinner.
that. It's like like white women have a way of appropriating other cultures and completely gutting them of any actual meaning they have. So like Buddhism is actually a deeply aristocratic and warrior like philosophy or religion or whatever you want to call it. Like it, there have been people like Julius Evola who have written extensively on that kind of stuff. It's just funny how this white woman, she fulfills the stereotype of just being like the peace loving hippie. It's cringe, but yeah, there's that, and then there's like all white women pretty much believe that like criminals aren't born, they're just made, and it's like a criminal, yeah,
Oh,
they're
been there,
like,
done that.
and it's
Yeah,
like
there's no such
Jesus,
thing
like,
as objective evil. Like
yeah,
there's no evil
it's
in the world. It's just magic.
like all he needed was a strong, loving mother, and it's like, you know, this is like, I mean, he's essentially acting in a masculine way, right? I mean, she even said, now you're not gonna let anyone get the better of you, and it's like, yeah, why the fuck would he? Like, when you're the president of a country, you shouldn't be letting people get the better of you. Like, if you're a man, period, you shouldn't be letting people get the better of you. Like, it's, I don't know, it's cringe, it's laughable, and
There's
it's
one
like,
thing.
You know, that situation
that
reminds me
stood
of
out. Yeah, I was going to say, Henri, one thing that stood out to me in particular is when she talks about, your mind. She's like her attitude, and I've seen this with a lot of white women. They encourage their sons to live in their mind instead of living in the real space, the reality that exists around them. This is why you get so many, I'm going to use, Vox Dei sociosexual hierarchy, but this is why you have so many gamma males. They've been smothered by their mothers. They get raised to behave, with female behavior patterns. They get taught to see themselves as a secret king in their own mind, whether or not that actually lines up with reality.
And that is the definition of insanity. If you see, well, he's a Roman Catholic, of course, but he's a very smart guy. If you see Thomas Aquinas' definition of truth, it is a correspondence between the mind and reality. To the amount that you have a correspondence between the phenomena of reality and your mind, you're looking at truth. If someone says to me, well, the sun is blue, I would say, oh, you're lying, because that is not a correspondence between his mind and reality. So these women, they are encouraging basically a disconnection between reality and the mind of the kid. They are basically making the kid insane, making it unfit for social life, unfit for any type of interaction, and unfit to express themselves. So white women are literally making white kids insane.
Well, they don't even have kids. Half of them, most of them, don't even have kids anymore, right?
Yeah.
And if they do, there's no father in the house.
like I
And
said, there's
the
been
father
about,
that sets the it's the father that sets the culture and the standards in the home.
I've known about 6 white females in like the last couple of years or so literally say like, and they always say it, right? You don't even ask them, right? Because it's kind of weird for a guy, because I mean, guys don't have female friends unless they want to fuck them or something. At least that's for me. But look, you don't ask them if they want to have children, but they find a way to like bring it up, and they're like, oh, I don't want to have children. Like, they say something like, I've got a dog and that's enough work, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, this is real. Like, I thought
That's
this
right,
was
old
more
dog.
American.
Guys don't have female friends unless they want to fuck them based.
I'm just saying that's for me. Like, I'm not actually talking to these people because I like to talk to them. I'm talking to them because I want to get something.
Yeah, I had a recent encounter with a white woman at my gym, but I don't think it's appropriate to share. I just thought about the fuck went down, but I think you guys are right. I think we should steer away from those women and have that type of. But more importantly, I mean, L Dog. I mean, those women aren't going to have kids. These quote unquote spiteful mutants. So
Correct.
it's probably best that they're dog moms as opposed to parents, children, because who knows? God knows what they might put there.
Oh my God! Look at this Steve Urkel. Look at this Steve Urkel looking black kid. He called her.
I was gonna say the other.
I hope you see this, Queen.
The irony of what that
Oh my
movie's
God.
video is that Putin actually did. Well, I don't know if his mother's no longer alive, but he did actually have a very strong relationship with his mother growing up. But she was not, the smothering kind at all. She was a Slavic woman who wanted her son to be tough, to be strong. It's anyway. I'm back when I was looking more into the history of Putin. It's actually rather fascinating, his early childhood life. But yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the other point too. Like, if you really like the white phenotype, don't go American, go for a Slav. Be smart, don't be stupid.
Yeah, like with American women, either they are too fat or they are too progressive or too crazy. So no,
all three,
yeah,
Dude,
fat or
Lucha,
crazy.
Dude, Lucha, I'm dead serious here. Like, I actually didn't date any of the American girls. Like remember, it was like when it was 15, 16. Then my friends would be like, dude, why don't you go for any of these chicks who like you? And I'm like, dude, all the white girls, they're fat. I'm not going for that. And then I remember my Lithuanian friend of mine, Lithuanian American, so third gen Lithuanian, but he was talking to me like, dude, why is he, and I remember like he asked me, so what girls would you go for? And then I pulled up my phone and I showed him some of the girls that I'd hang out with when I visit, Colombia, during my summers. Dude's I still remember his jaw dropped. He was like, holy shit, like he had not seen.
Dude, I've heard it's good out there, man. Like, I obviously this is gonna make me sound like one of those fucking incel ass.
Leave me with my girls on here, right?
L Dog wants to colonize.
Yeah, bro, we will bring
freaking white
the
people,
LGBT
man.
agenda to Colombia. We will bring McDonald's. We will bring.
It is already.
It's already here,
It's
bro.
already there.
It's already here. It is bad, bro.
How do you get when people go to McDonald's? Like in Colombia, you got El Corral. Like, that's superior to McDonald's. Why the hell would you want fast food? Why would you go to McDonald's? Like, I just don't get it. Like, El Corral was actually sweet. Like, man,
we will bring Euphoria season 3 to Colombia.
Oh no! Ew, no, yo, but for real
no comment.
Yo, for real though, I unironically love white women because honestly, you would have to be so bold as a person or just completely fucking airheaded to do something like that. Like, none of you guys would do that. None of you guys would.
Gloss, I be really honest. I'm really Muslim. I am really Muslim on women. I don't eat pork. I don't eat pork. I am messing with fat girls. I am messing with fat white women.
That's the true kosher law.
Listen, white women are nasty, man. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, there is a thing.
I had my share. Shout out to Kappa Cap Delta and all the other sororities that.
Take that how you
the
want.
reason why it took me six years to graduate.
I would mess with rednecks. I would mess with redneck women because I think they are decent. But aside from that, I wouldn't mess with white women. Like redneck women, I don't know, from Alabama, I will go for it. But I don't eat pork. I am really Muslim on that. I don't eat pork.
That's the thing. Like, just because I live in Texas and I got a brother living in Alabama, actually. Like, yeah, you can find a few gems, especially in the deep rural South. Like, you'll find some, but even there, like 60% of them are going to be fat, which 40%.
Anglo woman,
these schools like
Anglo woman,
Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, South Carolina.
Yeah, but the thing is, this is the thing that with redneck girls, like, so even if you find, let's say redneck girls who are, at least feminine looking and in shape, etc., like even there, like I've seen this really crazy phenomena where like it's with the conservative boomer-tard dads. They will raise their daughters to be like a poor copy of a man. They don't raise them to be feminine. Like, they want to show off their daughters.
Oh my God,
Look how good of a shot she is. Look how, she can work on a car. She can, replace her own alternator and all this fun jazz. So I've met these Texan
She's on the varsity team.
Exactly. I've actually dated a couple Texan belles who are very pretty, very feminine, feminine looking, but then how they behave, they're just acting like a dude, and it's like, I'm not looking to marry a woman who acts like a dude, and it's like
exactly.
And all of them have the same thing. They all have these conservative boomer-tard dads. It's such a crazy thing. Like it's and in terms of like the thing is, I do have a picture of what an Anglo-Saxon woman can be like, because there is, ironically, it's not just me, but like all the Tejanos, the Cubanos, the other Colombianos here in Tejas, among the Rocor parishes, there's this one American girl who's Orthodox, and is actually like just exudes femininity, and she's completely different from every other American girl I've ever met. And all of us have agreed, like, dude, this is like one white girl, like, who's actually marriageable. And of course, she's dating, or courting a deacon's son, so she's going to get taken soon. But like, it's kind of crazy because like you see her, and then we see every single other white girl in Texas, and we're like, bro, like the Americans really shot themselves in the foot with global homo. Like seriously, their women could have been so much better. But
Well,
and that's
yeah,
the
I
thing
mean,
is that when a white woman is at her peak, like that's like a very high peak. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Maybe because I'm a foreigner, so I don't. But I really like it when white girls have a Valley girl accent. Like it just turns me on so much. Like
No, that shit
it's
is
like,
that accent is irritating, man. What's
no,
wrong
that's
with
so
it?
irritating, dude.
No,
Like,
I was the opposite.
Beautiful accent is
At my
deep
alma
south.
matter, all the girls had
or a
the New
southern,
England
yeah.
accent. It's like that Mark Wahlberg movie.
I hate that. I hate it. Maybe it's because I'm from the East Coast, man. I want to fucking like rip my ears off, man.
Either Valley girl or southern accent. That's peak white girl. Anything else, they sound, I don't know. I'm not feeling.
yeah, I mean, I will say, like, people have looked at me crazy for saying this, but I will say liberal women are on average better than these conservative women. I think they're more feminine, and I think they look better. Like, just in my opinion.
Yeah, like they have like the blue hair and the smelly.
Obviously, that's the extreme. But I mean, most women I've met are liberals. Like, and I'm not meaning like the actual liberal. I mean like the pro LGBT, pro abortion. I mean, that's kind of what I expect out of a female.
Were you
I get what you
exposed to
mean.
like Austin women or something? Because I will say, like the Austin women they're crazy left wing, but they are not fat. That's the one thing I'll give them credit for.
Right, and that's what I've noticed. Like these women are good looking. It's just unfortunately they've been told to think for themselves, and it's like most people probably, and this isn't just for females, but most people probably shouldn't think for themselves. They should be just told what to do.
You
But they
know,
got no strong presence in their life, so
something that happened to me, Klaus, that was really funny. My university, my university is a Catholic university, but it's really, really, really gay and really LGBT, and really they want to be Americans. And I posted something like, abortion is really bad, killing your kid was really bad, and a girl texted to me, "Oh, you are so cute, but you are too conservative. That is so bad." And I was like, "Get the fuck off!"
Bro, these females are so. Oh man, bro,
Yeah.
like, because I love women, but I hate women. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, man,
see,
I feel you.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
So I have a question. Will this abortion nonsense be tax funded by the Colombian people?
Oh yes, man, it
Oh, there
will.
you go. You see, my view on abortion is like you can have your abortion, but don't tax me with your problems and your mistakes.
that never
Right.
happens though. And again,
It's
here's the thing.
always the government taxing the shit out of people for things that they don't for things that aren't my problem.
Here's the thing. So a lot of people have told me like, "Yo, I thought you were a libertarian. Why did you not support the abortion thing?" And I told them, like, I don't want to leave the morals out of it, but let's just, for the sake of the argument, let's leave the morals behind and let's just talk raw politics, raw group forming, that type of thing. No pro-abortion person is ever going to march for my right to have guns, right? Never, because all of these people, they always tend to be very progressive. They're anti-gun rights, that type of thing. So why would I break my back to support your right to kill, to kill babies, right? When you're not going to even do the same thing for me. So it's kind of like a reciprocal thing. It's you're not going to fight for my rights, so I'm not going to fight for your quote unquote rights, which is going to end up being an entitlement anyway, like you said, Corky. Like,
Well, yeah, for me, when it comes to like the left right paradigm in the U.S., I'll support whomever taxes me less. If you're supporting abortion, if the Fed is supporting abortion, the Fed is supporting me, taxing me for another woman's problems or another woman's mistakes. Pardon me for sounding harsh. So for me, that's a no-no. If people want their choice, then make your choice to murder your own child, but not on my not on my sweat.
No. I am more Islamic on that. Abortion should be prohibited on all cases, and the parish, the church, the family needs to take care of that because you cannot understand
I don't
abortion
know, man.
outside of the
We
social
need to
context.
stone those bitches. Just stone them.
I will say I am actually in favor of abortion pretty late into pregnancy, even.
Man,
L Dog
why?
must abort himself as an adult right now. Do it.
Well,
No,
You have
I
right
will
after
say,
pregnancy.
only
I
for
will
Do it,
dating.
L
say,
Dog. Do it.
Yo,
I'm
no,
in-
basically what L Dog's trying to say, yo, L Dog, what you're really trying to say is that you support abortion for black people. Like, just straight up say it, bro. Like,
no.
Freaking
I
white
mean,
people, man.
we don't even have those people here. But look, to me, it's like,
Call them
it's
those
like,
people.
well,
Man.
I called them people, right?
To
I
be
mean,
fair,
Man,
But-
why?
what do you mean,
Capitalize.
you people?
If you capitalize their skin complexion.
well, whatever you might think, like I am in favor ultimately of abortion pretty late into pregnancy, at least late enough to tell the gender and to tell like what defects it will have.
Don't know about that, bro, because I have heard about a ton of artists, thinkers that were born with defects and they were really good. They continue with their lives on.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not a eugenicist. If it's not my concern what other people do in their bedroom. If two retarded people want to breed in the bedroom, then let them do what they want. You know,
You know,
Look.
just not on my dollar.
there is a really good part to it. The racist community, everyone is racist. You can see a white person, a black person, a Hispanic. They will accept everyone
No,
as long as you're
uh,
racist.
Everyone here is a person of color.
Yo,
And the one that
basically,
isn't,
I'll put this down. No, I actually
we
wanted
all
to
know
share
what that
this.
means.
So, like, what do you call it? I actually got offered a scholarship by the United Negro College Fund because of the whole one drop rule thing. So, I mean, you can just look at me. I mean, Klaus has seen my face too. Like, this is actually my face. Like, they freaking offered me that. And I was like, holy cow, this is so stupid. I see why even the Nazis were like, the Americans were nuts. Because, like, sure, yeah, I got some African back there, but it's like way back there, and it's not exactly phenotypically, expressed in me. So,
he got some nigga on it. Yo, hold up. Yo, this is this was
not to worry. I mean, I applied as a Afro Dominican on my Common App, and I was accepted by numerous universities on that behalf. So I don't blame you.
No. There's this problem of.
I'm also a benefactor from those.
Yo, hold up. Yo, basically, L Dog was like,
What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?
Huh?
I think what Tug means is.
Yo, guys, but I think we're deviating a bit from the topic. I think we pretty much said what we wanted to say. I'm gonna have to end this because I do have to go to school early tomorrow. Early today, actually. It's already Friday.
I have an exam in 5 hours and I haven't slept.
Bro,
Oh, this was a great show, man.
You need a. So yeah, yo, let me know if you want to do Saturday or Sunday. I'm free either day. We're gonna talk about abortion now because we were supposed to talk about abortion, a couple of days ago, but I was just overwhelmed with work. So we're gonna talk about the abortion thing. We're gonna set up some arguments.
Yeah, I want to debate. I want some debate smoke on that, man.
Yeah.
That's on a serious note. That's tragic that the Colombian people have to pay money for this nonsense. This is
I
insane.
hate the Constitution.
I'm gonna put
I hate the Supreme Court. Some people need to be killed, man.
I'm gonna put my stats out there. Actually, I want post-birth abortion up to 1 month.
Okay, yo, L Dog, yo.
L Dog identifies as a 3-week-old.
Yo, L Dog, are
you? That was fucked up, but I don't want
L-Dog,
that. But
yo,
yeah.
are you gonna be free 9 p.m. Eastern on Saturday or Sunday?
Probably Saturday in America. Yeah.
Yeah, 9 p.m. Eastern Saturday. Yeah, because we're definitely gonna have some debate smoke if you're down for it.
I'm going to talk because it's a very controversial issue. I think we're all going to have some real hot takes, and it's going to be great. But thank you everyone for joining. You know, just pray for the innocents. No matter if they're Russian or Ukrainian, there's going to be some people dying that really don't deserve to die, and that's kind of like one of the take-home points that hopefully you guys can at least agree with. We'll see you guys on Saturday. Thank you very much, you guys. Have a good one. Peace.
Peace.